Well, we have got racing action galore across the evening. If you cannot wait until tomorrow for racing stateside, we will be putting on a show at the virtual Daytona International Speedway. Of course, the world centre of racing. Yes, we've got a 2.4-hour race this evening, and yes, we've got qualifying to deal with. We've got those Mazda MX-5 support races to deal with, and they're going to be incredible battle fests. But also, you have us to deal with. In the commentary booth, I'm Lewis McGlade, Ewan O'Leary and Zach Sweeney alongside. And lads, you did this last year. You know, you only had a lot of fun doing this last year. This year, having support series races. I mean, these MX-5 races are going to be absolutely mad.
Yeah, and they're going to be really good fun as well with the format that we've got. I'm sure we'll get into that in a sec, but I don't know if either of you have watched the MX-5 races so far. In real life, they've been amazing. So I'm hoping we get some similar action in RaceRoom. And then, of course, the big one, the 2.4-hour itself. Sven Mackenberg is here again after only finishing 600ths of a second behind the winner last year. It was a very, very close finish. He's looking to put that right this year, along with his brother, who's looking to repeat his GT3 championship, or GT3 win, I should say, that he got 1 year ago.
Now, Zach, this is actually a circuit that you do know, so that's a good start for this evening. And yes, there will be plenty of digs that way. Great track, though, when it comes down to strategy, when it comes down to fuel saving, all of that side of things is actually incredibly difficult around here. Potentially even more so in the MX-5 races than it is in the 2.4-hour, because when do you want to be leading? It's incredibly difficult.
I love Daytona, and yes, when you get those digs, it's fantastic. So definitely do look out for that over the course of the broadcast, because it's one of the many joys I get when I commentate with Lewis. It's honestly it's the thing I look forward to most. But yeah, no, Daytona, it's fast, it's flowing, it's got everything really that you could ask for of a circuit. You know, you go around the oval, then the tight and twisty bits, some really good overtaking opportunities, and it's just a fun circuit that will punish you if you make a mistake. But as you say with those MX-5s, they are from my experience, just glorified go-karts. You can chuck them into corners, you can have so much fun with them that, yeah, I cannot wait to see what it's like. And of course, with only 10 minutes per race, it's again just another interesting dynamic to it. For the 2.4 hours, they've got to think a little bit more long-term, and obviously with their fuel saving, their tyres, etc, etc. Whereas with the MX-5s, it's just an all-out brawl and trying not to be the one to lead on that run to the line.
Yeah, it's like I say, it's not going to be an easy affair, but they do get to do the rundown towards that line twice during the racing in the MX-5s, because as you can see in the bottom right, the race format, we've got an 8-minute qualifying session, which is currently underway, of which there is about 6 minutes left of. Then we'll be going to a 10-minute race, and then after that, it'll be a 10-minute race with the top 10 reversed, just because, well, you know, we just need to see some more drama, I think. That's the important bit. That run down towards the first corner is always going to be tricky, especially from a standing start, Ian, which is not typically something that we see around the Daytona International Speedway, but it's one of those things that spices up our events, we can tell you that for free.
Yeah, starting stationary on the bank here is going to be a little bit awkward in the at Daytona. So we'll see how that goes, but I can't see it affecting the outcome of the race too much. It's just about staying in the front group as much as possible, being there at the line, and as Zach said, not being first around the bus stop chicane, because otherwise you're going to get slipstreams like you would not believe.
I did get told it was a rolling start for this, so don't panic. We'll not panic too much. I do remember it being a standing start last year, so I was just panicking a little bit internally. But we should be all okay on that one. Like you say, qualifying track position, probably more important for the 2.4-hour race a little bit later, Zach, rather than these MX-5 races, which I'm pretty sure you can win from the back in these.
I'll be honest, I'm not too sure. I'm on the fence with it, in terms of track position, because you can make moves around Daytona. But again, with the MX-5s, it's more a case of, just sending those moves and moving your way forward. The only thing I will say in terms of the MX-5s is the sense that you've only got 10 minutes to work your way through the field, as opposed to, just under 2.5 hours to do it in the main event. But I mean, it's still possible. I'm going to expect we have some very close fields, particularly in the reverse grid race, where you can make those moves, and as long as you stay in the slipstream, it really is sort of anyone's game. But when you get into the actual 2.4-hour race, it's going to be a case, I think, of in some cases, I'd say starting pole maybe is more of a burden than a blessing. You want to be sort of second third, fourth for the majority of the race, just to coast and chill and sort of, you know, give yourself as easy a time as possible, rather than leading and constantly having that stress of everyone behind.
We can see the onboard lap, by the way, around the Daytona International Speedway. So we went through the International Horseshoe, the West Horseshoe, the King, back out onto the Oval. All of those overtaking opportunities on the inside. In a typical race car, in a typical scenario, you'd be sitting there thinking, right, that's where it's going to be done. Around here, less so, because you've got this enormous run around NASCAR 1 and 2 up towards the bus stop, which of course has been renamed. Don't know if this is the whole thing when it comes to renaming corner names, all that kind of stuff. Very, very difficult. Le Mans Chicane, I only want to call it, of course, as part of this era that we're entering when it comes to endurance racing. Calling it the Le Mans Chicane is a little bit difficult, and yes, we will probably still call it the bus stop. Out there into NASCAR 3 and 4, and this incredibly long run, once again, back round to the start-finish. I do not know, Ewan, when you want to be in the lead. Because the thing is, I get the feeling, at least in these MX-5s, these cars are potentially so slow that you could actually get ahead and then be repassed on the run towards the line, all in between the bus stop and the start-finish line that we're coming across now.
Well, I think that's something that we saw in the first of the races in real life the other night, or last night, because the leader was trying to tuck back in again and come back through, and I didn't think there was quite enough time to do that, really. So I think the only time you really want to lead is in the final few metres, really, because that's when you're not going to get slipstream past. It's going to be very, very close, although then again we are building up highly, and maybe someone is going to run away with it. I do feel like that is unlikely, but you never know, it could well happen. And as you can see, the field's relatively close. There's nobody running away with this, so I think we are going to see a relatively close field remaining throughout the event. But there's nothing really on the line here other than bragging rights, I suppose, so that will hopefully release some of the tension from this race, Zach, because sometimes these championships can get a bit tense. This is just a bit of fun, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a support race, 2 10-minute sprints. It's just go out there, enjoy yourself, make those overtakes, and yeah, sort of give us some action, give us, you know, something to get excited about, get us pumping and raring to go for the 2.4 hours of Daytona yet to come up into qualifying then. And at the moment it's Hawken that leads the way, but only by just over 0.5 of a second ahead of the Frenchman of Philip Howe. Then we've got sort of a bit of a break of a couple of tenths back to Machuca in P3, but then beyond that it still remains quite close. I think we're in for a relatively, well, so far a pretty damn good race preceding us.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see. We've seen a couple of issues when it comes down to the braking. With Gerhard Waltner earlier on in the session, seeing him struggle to get down into the braking zone going into the bus stop chicane. Brandon Hawken, who's currently on the pole position, going down to the West Horseshoe and struggling. Enzo Filipao will start alongside Machuca, Christian Orban, user Mike Bull as well inside that top 10. The rest of them will cycle their way through. And like you say, it's a competitive grid. It's going to be a different grid. It's going to be a difficult run down into that first corner where we might well see a fair amount of drama.
Yeah, we might well do, and we'll just have to see how much there is, I suppose, because turn one very, very narrow indeed. But these cars are very small, to be fair. There's a lot of runoff on the outside line at turn one, so they might be able to use a little bit of that. And as I mentioned, the cars are very small, so they can actually filter their way through quite nicely. But something that's going to make people really nervous, I think, even in a race as short as this, is losing the draft. If you lose the draft to the front group, then that's basically a race over. The front guys will be away. It's very difficult to catch back on when you get disconnected like that. So let's see if anybody does. Yeah, we'll get with the race start very, very soon, Zach, and see who loses the draft. I think we could see a very big group at the end of lap one, to be honest.
Can't wait. I think people are going to have their heads screwed on. Yes, it's only a 10-minute race, but you do sort of have to think long game. In only a 10-minute race, you've got to think, okay, I'm here now. Where do I want to be really on that run to the line? You've only got a few laps to sort of poise yourself up. And if you do anything silly going into turn one or over the course of the first couple of laps, you are tarnishing your ability to be in the fight towards the front later on in that race. However, you have got race 2 to look forward to. So I suppose that those that maybe do languish back a little bit or make a couple of mistakes here and there, they've got that race 2 to look forward to with the top 10 reverse.
Well, the race start is about to get underway. We'll see if Brandon Hawken can hold on that race down towards the very first corner. You can see him there, Renzo Filipao alongside. The formation lap, so to speak, in big air quotes, is underway as they head round the final couple of corners. We'll get ready to go racing, and again we'll see them do this twice in the MX-5s. Then we'll see the 2.4 hour race, the big main event here. And like I say, if you are getting ready and raring to go for the real life Daytona 2.4H, which will be starting tomorrow, it's a nice little way for us as fans, you as viewers, the drivers as well, to get themselves right into that racing mindset. It's going to be a very difficult run round for quite a lot of these drivers. A lot of those in the mid-pack, we kind of look at the likes of Sebastian Ray, Peter Daniel, those that we would be expecting to move forward, Gail Gordon, or even, as we saw his struggles at the early stages of this qualifying session. Brandon Hawken will be starting on pole position with Enzo Filipao alongside, Van Matuka and Christian Orban, the front couple of rows, as they head down to the start-finish. We'll see who's going to lead their way down into that first corner and continue on this 10-minute, the first of two 10-minute races in the Mazda MX-5s here on RaceRoom at the Daytona International Speedway. We are underway. They all go single file heading down into the first corner, and we'll see if there's going to be any big dive bombs. At the moment, the Canadian's going to hold the whole shot down into that first corner. A couple of switches in the mid-pack, but at the moment, Hawken has that run through the first corner. User going on the attack of Christian Orban, who started from fourth position but having a bit of a struggle, and going around the outside in the background, that's Pavlicek trying to make up a move at the back end of the top 10, Ewan.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a clean start, roughly, for them into the first corner, at least into the International Horseshoe. It gets a little bit closer between everybody just for now, but it does look like we've been able to get away nicely. Because of the rolling start and the way that it works, the drivers have been quite spaced out as they go onto the, or through the start-finish line, and that has helped a little bit, I think. It's certainly helped Brandon Hawken because he's been able to basically be unchallenged into turn number one, and so he's able to get away from the rest of the field. The top four, by the way, in that qualifying session, and they've remained in this race start with the four fastest during the qualification phase, so it's no surprise to see them up there. But it's been a very clean start, Zach, we're happy to see.
Yeah, everyone keeping it nice and clean, at least for now. However, Kingston Lee getting a bit of a poor run heading on to the oval. This could allow Dylan DaCosta to have the run to the right-hand side. It's a long way around through the oval, bit of wheel-to-wheel banging as they run their way through. No slipstream really to the cars in front, so Kingston Lee really having to do the heavy lifting, getting pushed maybe from field is DaCosta in towards the Le Mans chicane. These guys have got to start thinking wise, because already Lawson is about a second clear, pushing his way through field with DaCosta backing out on the run in towards the Le Mans chicane, side by side as they run their way through. It is going to be Dylan DaCosta that gets himself up into 8th place. However, Lewis, at a bit of a cost.
Yeah, it looked a little bit dicey, the mid-pack. Saw Sebastian Ray dropping back down the order, now battling it out with Costa and Friedrich, but I think having even more issues. One of those drivers we were expecting to move forward throughout this race. Kingston Lee in field again, continue to switch. We'll see the timing screen switching when they're just very, very close, so don't panic too much if you see a couple of switches around. There will be a little bit of bump drafting, etc. But Yuzo's just trying to get through Nirvana at the moment, and there is a couple of changes behind even that. It's a pretty clean first lap compared to where we're expecting, but the top three is starting to pull away. Brandon Hawken and Enzo Filipao potentially having a bit too much speed, but is that Enzo Filipao going slow? It certainly is on the exit of the first corner. Could that be a slowdown?
It could well be. I can't think of any other reason why he'd be going so slowly out of turn one and through the S's there. So clearly dropping down for some reason. Brandon Hawkins found himself out front though, and normally that's a terrible thing in these Masters because of the draft and the way that that works around the circuit. However, it might not be the worst thing during this race because the field behind are actually quite spread out. It's only really a problem when there's an organised set of chasing cars behind you, then it becomes a problem. But with the mess that we have behind, it's really not happening. As I said at the time, the mid-pack is really where we're seeing action all the way, outside the top 10. It's absolutely crazy. Back there, that's more like what I was expecting to see at the front of the field, Zach, to be honest. But Brandon Hawken has just gone.
Yeah, he's flying off in front, and full respect to the Canadian. He is, as calm and composed as you would like it, and in a 10-minute race, a breakaway this early on is exactly what you like to see. A bit of side-by-side action a little bit further back in the field, beyond the top 10, the craziness as to what Ewan was alluding to. And as you can see, when you're in packs this close and you run your way through the oval, as soon as you get beached on that outside line, you can see Yossi unfortunately getting beached on that right hand side. Those in behind are just like, cool, yeah, inside line for me, running their way through, maybe even 3 wide in towards the Le Mans chicane, very much to the wise, a bit of contact, scraping their way through relatively cleanly. Oh wait, actually not. The white MX-5 unfortunately having a bit of a spin there, and that's what happens when things get this chaotic.
Yeah, that was Nick Martin, Fernando Gill also coming through there, also massive respect. I wasn't going to go with the second name, I was just going to call him Attila from now on, because when you get a G, a Y and an O all back to back, it's a solid no from me, as we see Oisa up here getting, or holding on rather, with Christian Orban. The battle for 4th position on the road at the moment, and Orban switching up, trying to get around the outside. Lawson's joining into the mix, and Lawson saying goodbye to the mix, going completely straight out through the first corner. You can see that in the foreground as well. Enzo Filipao and Machuca going side by side once again. A little bit of a battle between the two of those into the first corner and going up towards the International Horseshoe, allowing Brandon Hawkins to pull out a 1.5 second lead at the moment. He's gone, he's checking out. We've only got 5 minutes left in this race. It's expected to be a 5-lap race. We've already ticked off 2 of them, and Brandon Hawkins is definitely showing himself as being the favourite around the Daytona International Speedway at the moment.
Yeah, and it's partly because of this kind of battling that's going on for second place is not helping them at all, and it's happening really all inside the top 10 between 2 and 4 car groups. He's battling away instead of staying organised. Hawkins not actually getting away any further from these drivers. He's remaining at about 1.5 seconds, just over, but he's not losing any time, importantly, and it's such a short race. This kind of gap can be taken to the line. It will be 2 laps to go at the line. And Brandon Hawkins got a fantastic chance here. Everybody behind just isn't organised enough to catch him.
No, unfortunately they're not thinking too wise. They're more concerned about fighting for second place or whatever position they're holding out at the moment, side by side between Filipao and Machuca as they run their way in towards the Le Mans chicane. This is the things we're talking about that's allowing Hawkins to get away. Outside line for the Spaniard. Is it going to go his way? He's going to get squeezed out, unfortunately for him, by Filipao, who just about manages to hang on. The more they fight, however, this is going to sort of start to stray away from a 1v1 situation, and bringing in the likes of 4th, 5th, that train back into the mix. This could very quickly become a very hectic fight for second.
Yeah, it's tight between a lot of them. It's tight between a lot of people on this grid. Gerd Gordon there on the right hand side, having moved up a fair amount of positions, up to 14th position after the race start, and continuing to move up the order. Passer's the next one to come across, whilst we see that battle for 5th on the left hand side of your screen. Like we said, Brandon Hawkins ticking off another lap, completing yet another one at the front of the field. Da Costa going out a little bit wide, Lawson coming back into it, and Christian Orban sat there thinking, please can you two battle just a touch more. Mike Bull and Kingston Lee also might be joining this fight if there's any further wrongdoings. Out in the background, I think that was Attila who was out wide.
Yeah, looked like it, and losing positions as a result. Gerd Gordon looking down the inside there at the International Horseshoe, not able to get through. But the mid-pack is really where the action is. Outside the top 10, it's been fantastic. Lots of racing, but I mean, none of them are going to benefit from the reverse grid that we're about to see. Top 10 reversed, of course, and most of those positions look set in stone at the moment. I mean, they're battling in amongst the top 10, but it doesn't look like anybody new is going to get inside the top 10 with a 3-second gap between 10th and 11th right now. So it does look like we know who is going to be up towards the front by the second race, but let's see. The mid-pack really has been a very interesting one here, Zach, but the top 10 less so. Just 2 car battles here and there.
Yeah, it's strange. I don't know how to feel about it. I mean, I'd love to see the mid-pack fights up amongst the top 10, but hey, we'll take what we can get. It is so far proven to be awesome, and yeah, don't forget we have got the reverse grid coming up just after this, so that is also going to be a marvel to look at. Looking at the time in tower, Machuca ahead now of Enzo Filipao, but focusing on this fight between Lawson and Orban, once again running their way through the Le Mans chicane, but with only, well, just under 2 minutes left to go. It really is crunch time. It's do or die into these sort of final moments. You've got to poise yourself exactly where you want to be for that final lap.
Yeah, like we say, we've kind of sat back and wondered about whether you want to be leading directly coming out of the Muscle chicane or what the slipstream is doing. The slipstream's been less potent than I expected, to be quite honest. And right now, for the likes of Brandon Hawken, I mean, he's so far away from everyone, he doesn't have to worry about it. Same with Oyster as well, in 4th position at the moment. It's Christian Orban making it 3 wide a little bit. Oh my goodness, squeezing onto the low side. That's Phil Lawson, who somehow keeps control of the car, getting to the inside of DaCosta as it was 3 wide across the line, and somehow Lawson is still on the road, is still going, is still panicked, don't get me wrong, but is a part of this fight. 1 minute and 10 seconds left to go, final lap of this race. It is going to be a tight run to the line, and that tells me we are definitely seeing him in a 3 wide.
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, I don't think it's a stretch at all to say that that was the wrong side to choose there for Lawson in terms of going down the inside at turn 1. Should have just gone high as well. It would have been a 3 wide moment for sure, but just going to the high side there wouldn't have been a problem at all. Going to the lower side, a bit more of a problem really. But anyway, they've all gotten away with it somewhat remarkably, and they're all still going. But certainly something to remember on the run towards the line. I do agree though, the slipstream has been a little bit less powerful than I might have expected here, Zach. I wasn't expecting a leader to get away quite like this.
No, absolutely not, but full respect to Brandon Hawken. He's been on fire since the start of this race and has capitalised off other people battling and has used that to his advantage, has used that to just do some clean running, get away, but now in race 2 is going to be the hard whack. We focus our attention to second place because this really is the only thing that's going to be decided on that final run to the line, but full respect to the Canadian. The dive maybe from the Frenchman, Philippe, trying to reclaim second. Oh my word, there's snaking their way through, and he's just about managed to scrape his nose ahead.
Yeah, that was never really going to fully work. I think he's got a slowdown penalty as well as Enzo Filipao, so might well lose out on a podium as well as Oyster comes around the outside to take over that 3rd position. The race down towards the line, we'll see Brandon Hawken, and quite an easy run, a little bit out of his comfort zone. I think we don't normally see him racing over here in Racing Experience, but welcome to the platform anyway. Brandon Hawken to cross the line to take victory here in the first of the MX5 race at the Daytona International Speedway, and there might have been even more of an issue as Machuca's DNF'd on the run towards the line. Oyster and Enzo Filipao come across the line to take 2nd and 3rd, but what happened to the Spaniard there? Fran Machuca out of the race. There is 3 wide up towards the line. Gail Gordon had to lift out in the middle of all of that. My goodness, that was a bit scary.
Yeah, that's more like what we expected to see for the race win maybe, but we got it outside of the top 10 in those battles that were just so populated all day long. It does look though as if Fran Machuca got that disconnection on the very final lap. He'd done all the corners of the race unfortunately, but he's disconnected I'm afraid, and that is him out of the race. A real disappointing DNF for him, and he'll be starting the 2nd race from last as well if he can get into it, Lewis.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they will be able to rejoin it. But either way, like you say, very unfortunate as well. If there is a time to disconnect, it wasn't that. Brandon Hawken will take the victory regardless. Oyster and Filipao rounding out the podium with Christian Orban in 4th, DaCosta 5th, Lawson, Mike Ball, Kingston, Lee Field, and Orbital rounding out the top 10. Some of those bigger names from behind, again, some of the other ones to pick out. I think it might have been 3 wide between Pavlicek, Passer and Gail Gortner across the line there for 11th, for 12th, 13th and 14th rather on the list. Again, Sebastian Ray having some issues early on, and then Machuca down there at 26th. I mean, Zach, that's sometimes how these races go, but that is beyond unfortunate.
It's racing. That's all you can really pin it to. I mean, it's what you sign up to do. You carry that risk as soon as you fall in love with motorsport. It's like, yeah, sometimes it goes your way, sometimes it doesn't, and unfortunately that's how it went for the Spaniard on this particular occasion. There's still stuff to take from that. He was very quick and really did put on a good show between himself and Enzo Filipao throughout the entirety of that race. It is a shame, really, as to how it ended, how it did, but again, that is just racing. That's how it goes, and as unfortunate as it is, you know, there's nothing you can do about it.
And now the real question will probably arise as to whether Brandon Hawken can go back to back when it comes to these races.
Yeah.
Any answers? You first, yay or nay?
Well, I don't think so, actually. Qualifying was surprisingly important, actually, in that race, I felt. I thought just because of the rolling start, really, it spaces the cars out so much, really, into turn 1. that nobody can really make up the moves in turn 1, and I think Hawkins going to find it difficult to win, because let's not forget he did run away with that, but I wouldn't say he's miles better than the rest of the field. There's some very strong drivers inside the top 10. There's going to be some very strong drivers on the front row, Zach.
I'm going to disagree with you just for the sake of disagreeing. Let's see him do it. Let's do it. Come on, Brandon Hawkins. I mean, if people do it, go on. What do you want to say, Lewis?
I was going to say I'm going to disagree with you, Zach. I don't know. I agree with you, and I don't know, Zach. I think it does look like it is difficult to pass around here. I mean, why do you think that he won that race? Was it out of pure pace, or was it out of errors from behind?
Racecraft. I think it was Brandon Hawkins, being cleverer than the rest of the field. He was able to, get pole, do the hard work in qualifying, and then was just like, yeah, see you in a bit. Everyone was fighting behind him. What's to say, in this race, those that now start towards the front are not going to battle hard and keep Brandon Hawkins in the mix.
See, I think the big thing that made Brandon Hawkins win that race was a mistake from Enzo Filipao. I don't know if you remember it. It was the slow down penalty or whatever he had down at turn 1. That for me is what made Hawkins win that race. No?
It made Filipao lose the draft, certainly, and you could argue that is the key thing around here, and so that means Hawkins was able to get away without a real major challenge, but I'm not sure. I think that he's going to have a hard time getting through, and let's not forget, it's only a 10-minute race.
That is true. Obertal starts then on the pole position, the reverse grid pole position. The top 10 have been sent around. Field alongside Kingston Lee, Mike Ball, Lawson, DaCosta. That is the first 3 rows before we get down to those that were battling for the podium in the previous race. The second race here in the MX-5s is underway. Obertal taking the race lead down into that first corner, and Field is going on the attack, trying to find some way to pass, trying to find some way to come through. The answer is no at the moment. Of course, there's side-by-side between Lawson and DaCosta coming through the first corner. Out wide once again. I think that is Pavlicek for the second time in 2 races, going out very wide coming through the first corner. There's a lot of ducking and weaving as there's a slow runner going through that international horseshoe. I think that might have been Lawson.
It could well have been. It's a lot more of a chaotic start though in these opening moments than we saw in the first race. Brandon Hawkins been able to get up on 2 positions so far, but he is being challenged again by Orban just behind. They're going to go side by side into the West Horseshoe as well, but it's all staying very close, helped by the fact that the 2 leaders went side by side briefly there. Another bit of muscling through done on DaCosta, who's been pushed down to 6th place, and his compatriot Filippo's going to try and get through as well on the outside line. Not going to be able to, by the looks of things, into turn 6. This is a lot more of an aggressive, a lively start on this occasion, Zach, compared to what we saw in race 1.
Yeah, everyone's just straight out of the boxes and going for it. I'm absolutely loving this. Where to look on this open lap, side by side. DaCosta trying to actually hang on to 5th place, get himself up into 5th place, and also keep mindful of those in behind. Enzo Filipao trying to make up places. Brandon Hawkins trying to make up places as well. 2 wide, 2 deep, and now the fight for the lead as well. Field trying to get past Obertal as they run their way through the Le Mans chicane for the first time, keeping the top 4 very much close together, still running side by side though, that fight for 5th. Honestly, Lewis, I don't know where to look. I don't know whose name to call out because everyone's doing something.
Yeah, as long as that person is in the 18th spot, 17th spot now, we're okay. Just because I'm terrified of that name, Attila. Moving up the order courtesy of some issues further down. Mateusz Friedrich, by the way, I think is the one that had those issues just a second ago and has dropped down the order. DaCosta stuck in the middle of all of this, but has Filipao and Hawkins behind. Hawkins pulls out the slipstream to try and make a look, to try and do something and try and find a pathway into the first corner, noticing that the top few are starting to pull away a decent amount. It's 7/10 of a second of the lead. Oh, see you, DaCosta. That was absolutely not what you deserved. Getting sent off, I believe, by Enzo Filipao going into the first corner. That was very unfortunate, but Ewan, it's so easy to do.
It is very easy to do, but I don't think we can pin that on anyone apart from Enzo Filippo there, I'm afraid. It was pretty blindingly obvious and unfortunate to see that Mazda go to the outside of turn 1. Thankfully, because of the nature of turn 1, it is, well, he hasn't hit anything, and that's the only positive I suppose you can take at Ford Acosta, I'm afraid. The front group, though, staying very close together. Very glad to see this after Brandon Hawkins' demolition of the field in race 1. It's staying a lot closer, and oddly, that works into the hands of the race 1 winner, Brandon Hawkins, who's into 6th place now, coming under a bit of pressure from Soiser at the moment into turn 6. Going to have to leave a little bit of space there, as is almost everybody really, coming out of turn 6, Zach. It's very, very close indeed, but this is not a long race. I mean, even being back in 6th right now, it's a fairly long way back with the distance we have remaining.
Yeah, I mean, you can make up 1 place lap and still not work your way up into sort of that lead fight. You've really got to hit the ground running and go for it really early on and start making those moves very quickly, almost onto the apron there for someone just in front of this fight, nearly into the Le Mans chicane, ducking and diving, don't really know where to go, and that is the case. There is Enzo Filipao getting himself up ahead of field and onto the podium place, and off the circuit invites everyone through. Again, that's another danger of packed as close as this, is as soon as something goes wrong, you've got, a good 4-6 people ready to pick up the pieces.
Zach's really missing out the perfect opportunity to say that Steve Field was following on from his namesake there, cutting completely across the inside of the Mans chicane and dropping right the way back down the order. A big shame to having good pace at the start of this race. A switch for the lead though. Obratal finally is going to lose it because Phil Lawson's come through to take over that race lead. And there we have our new race leader, and we have everyone else fighting over 3rd. Oh my goodness me, you've got Enzo Filipao on the inside of the number 1 car. You've got our race winner of Hawkins. That's a big moment though from Oyster, who's just been sent around with Kingston Lee. Contact between the two of them going into that first corner, and that is why 3 wide into the first just doesn't work.
Well, it can work, and there was room for them, but just that little bit of contact unsettled everybody, and they all found themselves in the wall. Oyster found himself in the wall the most, I guess you could say, because he really did smack the pit lane exit wall there, and it's surely got quite a lot of damage to that Mazda now. He's well outside the top 20 as things stand. It's also allowed a top 5 group to get away as they battle for 6th behind, very close into the West Horseshoe again, gradually being kicked up into the faces of everybody, and everybody makes their way through, thankfully. But this is all kinds of action as we go on board with Fran Machuca here, Zach. A remarkable recovery from last to 10th position, a really great drive.
Yeah, was just about to applaud the Spaniard. It's been a fantastic race so far. He's still got just under half of it left to go, but inside the top 10, only commendations for that. Like, fair play. You really have got to, have your wits about you and to be fast to make things like that work. And it's good that the Spaniard hasn't allowed the woes of race 1 to affect him going into race 2. He's seen it more as an opportunity for redemption rather than something to sort of be upset about, and is now pushing fairly firmly inside the top 10. A little bit deep there from Hlavna in towards the Le Mans chicane. Could see them on the back foot against Field and Machuca again for the fight for now for 8th. So Machuca, he's picking off. He gets past 1 and he looks forward. He's like, okay, there's another, let's go get him.
Yeah, and another person moving forward, 14th, I believe, might have been 12th, that Gail Gordon started this race. Well, there's another one getting past the previous race winner. But I don't think Hawkins would have fought that one too hard. Number 1, because he couldn't, because of the slipstream. And number 2, because I don't think it's in his best interest. Wants to get Ortner between himself and Filipao to, again, have another car between as a buffer for that slipstream to try and get that overspeed, to try and catch the top 3. It does look like it could well be a 5-car fight for the race lead, but there might well be a switch as to who's going to be in second, because it looks like Enzo Filipao is going to take over that second position. Obratal moving out, a bit of a slide though from him, a bit of a spin though from him, and he goes round. Oh, and who else has been round? Was that Gail Gortner as well? I was saying it was going to be 3 for the race lead, 5 for the race lead. It's definitely going to be 3 now, as unfortunately Machuca's also been round. It is all happening into the International Horseshoe.
Yeah, you can just see everybody just pushing the limits further and further, and eventually they've overstepped the mark, unfortunately, and that's a spin for 3 drivers in 1 corner, remarkably, and very unfortunate as well. It might have given the chance for Lawson to go out front and go on to win this race. Phil Lawson with a 1.2 second gap at the moment, Zach. He might have just broke the slipstream. Filipao and Brandon Hawkins are very, very quick though. I would argue slightly quicker than Phil Lawson, with no disrespect to him. If they work together, they could be there by the final lap.
That's a case of if they work together. I think Philippou and Hawkin both want to win this race, and both of them are going to start to be thinking about that better objective. The first sort of milestone is to get that gap under a second. They're very, very close to it, but for Lawson, put the laps in, don't even look in your mirrors, and just drive as fast as you can. Hope that the two behind start to fight, but yeah, sort of just prepare yourself for maybe them eventually catching up, but try to delay that. But even through the Le Mans chicane alone, Enzo Philippou gained a good couple of tenths. I think this isn't a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Yeah, unfortunately that gap, like you say, went up to 1.1, and going through the Le Mans chicane, it's already come down to half a second, 5/10 an end. The run is just getting better and better for the likes of Enzo Philippou and Hawkin. What does Hawkin do now? Exactly what I thought. Rather than going for the overtake, there's no point in leading heading on to the final lap of the race. You want to be leading at the end of the final lap of this race. Fastest lap being set then from Enzo Philippou. A bump draft and assistance from the Canadian behind, but out wide in the first corner, and that is Hawkins' opportunity to switch it up to get back to the inside and potentially take over second on the race down towards the International Horseshoe, Ewan.
Well, I was about to say that if I was Hawkin, I would stay in third, just watch these two in front, but clearly there was an opportunity there that couldn't really be missed. Enzo Philippou making a mistake into turn one. They've got to make sure they don't take each other off, because if they fight too much, then neither of them are going to be able to win this race. It's very, very close. Phil Lawson, well, there's not a lot he can do from this point. He's just got to hope that somebody overtakes him, I think, and he can slot back into second. I don't think there's long enough, Zach, for him to be overtaken out of the bus stop and draft back past before the line.
No, absolutely not. He's going to just be hoping, maybe sort of backing off and inviting Philippou through on the inside, just to be able to get that run, because if not, as you say, he is just going to get completely mugged off by the likes of Enzo Philippou and Brandon Hawkin, who I think of the three is definitely in the best position of the bunch. However, Lawson does sort of, in a sense, you know, if he's clever about it, can control the pace into the Le Mans chicane, back everyone up just a little bit, and then decide when to punch it. No one wants to be leading off the apex. Defensive sort of goes Lawson, maybe backing off to invite Philippou through. I think everyone is going to be lifting off just a little bit. Philippou just inherits the lead for a second. Is he going to go for the move around the outside? No is the answer to that one. He has to get a good run though. Very, very close indeed. Is it maybe too close? I think that's what Lawson's hoping about, is the sense that they're too close to really utilise the slingshot, but it's looking less and less likely for him.
Yeah, that was a slow exit, unfortunately, for Philippou. It was potentially a little bit too close, but now the slipstream's going to take full effect. We could well see three wide. I think we definitely will see three wide up towards the line. It's just going to be who's going to be crossing it first. Lawson, Philippou, and Brandon Hawkin. Race winner the previous race. Everyone else trying to get amongst him as well. Here we go up towards the line. Hawkin goes underneath. Philippou having a slow exit, courtesy of a slowdown penalty, and it is going to be Lawson across the line. That mistake was a little bit too much to overcome, and Brandon Hawkin has to settle for second, Philippou for third. But the race victory for Lawson, we'll see Mike Bull, and I think was that Halavana as well, across the line for fourth position. Sebastian Reyes did a great job to work his way up into sixth. Meanwhile, Gail Gordon once again comes across the line in a huge pack, because of course he did. Why wouldn't he?
Well, exactly, and he comes across the line 14th for the second race in a row as well, which is weird, but anyway, he has done, and a decent race from him as well. Great battling, though, once again, between all of the drivers. Very, very fun to watch indeed. Obertel may disagree with me there, but a very good race again.
Yep, fastest lap was set by Philippou, but unfortunately the slow run up towards the line cost him the race victory. Hawkin and Lawson taking first and second. Second for Hawkin, first for Lawson. Lavana in fifth. Bull in fifth, rather. Lavana in fourth. Ray, Pavlicek, Field, Martin and Attila rounding out the top 10. Great drive for a lot of these to have risen up the order, but unfortunately for a few of them, it's more so what could have been in the race, especially for that driver there in 12th. Did an insane job to get up inside the top 10 of the first half of the race, and then had that spin going through the International Horseshoe, and Fran Machuca sitting down in 12th. Gail Gordon, another one with those spins, down in 14th position. Christian Orban, Da Costa, etc. A couple of issues for a fair few of those, but as we've seen these two fantastic MX-5 races, and again, the reason you are all here is to watch 2.4 hours of fantastic racing. Before we get to that though, we're just going to step aside and have a bit of a breather after two crazy MX-5 races. Yes, yes, yes. I know all of the attention was on the Praga R1 there. Everyone loves it, of course. Goldie being in the game, absolutely fantastic. That's all well and good, but so much content there here on RaceRoom Racing Experience, including the brand new MX-5, which we've just seen battle its way around. Our focus of attention, though, moves into this race, into the 2.4 hours at the Daytona International Speedway. Once again, myself, Lewis McGlade, Ewan O'Leary, Zach Sweeney in the booth, ready to deal with 144 surely frantic minutes, Ewan.
Yeah, and hopefully interesting minutes as well. We're hoping. It was a great race last year. Very close margins at the end between 1 and 2 overall, just 600ths of a second.
Botti will start from the front row of the grid in the lead category. And behind them, again, it was tight qualifying as well for those behind. We'll wait for confirmation on the qualifying results before we get into the race. But, Zach, I think if there's one thing that we're going to see is surely it has to be drama. Multi-class racing, etc., etc., is dramatic at the best of times, but that's typically over a 24-hour race. And then, you know, in 2.4 hours, sure, there's even more drama.
It's all the action of a 24-hour race sort of just densely compact into 144 minutes. While, yes, you don't quite get the full day's worth of action, you still get quite a lot. You know, in 2022, we had a fantastic duel amongst all of the, well, particularly in the P2 and in the GT3 classes. We had some, well, not necessarily, you know, side-by-side action for the race lead, but, you know, the strategical element started to leak in as well. The P2s saw that side-by-side action. The GT3s saw, I think it was Marvin Mackenberg try something a little bit different in terms of his strategy to sort of get an edge over those around him, and to my knowledge I think it did actually work. Again, that is if I can remember correctly, but I do think that is going to, you know, play forward into 2023 in the sense that we're going to have some fantastic racing no matter what happens. It's always something interesting when you get 3 different classes battling around the same bit of tarmac, and here we go, 2 hours and 24 minutes on the clock. Oh, let's just see how it goes.
Yep, 3 classes of racing to talk you through a little bit as to what's going on here. Like we said, Sven Mackenberg and Alessandro Botti taking the pole position, the front row of the grid in the prototype category. In the GTEs, Marvin Mackenberg, so Mackenberg sweeping their categories when it comes to pole position alongside Rokas de B in the GTE category. And then in the GT3s, a little bit hard to work out where they are, courtesy of an awful lot of Porsches, but I do believe it's Rydell and Rui Felipe starting alongside each other on the front row of the grid. Let's talk, though, about the racing itself, because it is about to get underway with Sven Mackenberg starting from pole position, Botti alongside Parvin, Grota, Hout, Kielman as well. It's going to be a difficult race down towards the first corner, but it all begins here. For 2 hours, 24 minutes, the race is underway, and it is the lead being held from Sven Mackenberg, of course, but it's all about this point as we see the prototypes rolling in. That's Parvin with a big send to the inside as he tries to take over second position and potentially the race lead as well. I think he had a slightly better run off the corner down towards the International Horseshoe, and you can see him coming through there. Daniel Parvin could potentially be going from third to first, but Sven Mackenberg sent it in deep. The up and under's taken, and it's Alessandro Botti that will lead off the International Horseshoe, Ewan.
What a start to this race that was, absolutely unbelievable. Parvan looks like he just about has held on. Botti was so close to taking it away as we see the start of the race for those behind as well. Marvin Mackenberg has held the lead in GTE. Southern has gone up to the lead in GT3 at the moment, but what a start to this race we saw there. Botti is now in the lead with Mackenberg and Parvan. For the 3 of them to be battling as they were, Zach, that was unbelievably entertaining.
Not wasting around at all for the start of this race. They are hitting the ground running and absolutely going for a jostling for P1 on the circuit, and what a move that was from Botti, just to see it coming and then capitalise on it as soon as possible. A fight for 4th as well between Grot and Greet as well in towards the Le Mans chicane for the first time, and it is going to go the way of the Norwegian, who just about hangs on to 4th place and trying to settle in. But again, like we saw with the MX-5s, those in sort of the mid-pack fights do not want to battle too hard amongst themselves as to not lose the slipstream to those in front. Parvan again trying to put put some pressure on Sven Mackenberg, but I think opted just to tuck in behind, or maybe even not, going to the right-hand side. No, back in. He's playing it sensible.
Yeah, well, we have seen a little bit of bump drafting going through NASCAR 3 and 4, proving that it can be done somehow, just without being sent off to the moon. Either way, there's a bit of a mistake from Botti. Speaking of being sent off to the moon, that one was a solo effort from Alessandro Botti, straight out wide to drop the race lead and to drop back to third position. Sven Mackenberg will then hold the advantage heading through the first corner, but this is where we're going to see lots of slipstream, lots of bump drafting, not only in the prototype category, but in GTE and GT3 as well. But of course, they're all struggling for track position. You can see all those cars in the background. Well, soon they will be ahead of them. When they come round to lap them, there is going to be lots and lots and lots of drama, surely.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very worried about the first run through traffic, actually, because these Daytona prototypes do not look like they brake very well. They don't look like they stop at all. And when you think about the fact that the GTEs, they have pretty good brakes, but the GT3s especially have ABS, of course, they can go very deep into these braking zones, especially into turn number 1, and that's going to be a real problem for these Daytona prototypes trying to work their way through. We've seen already, a number of drivers going wide. We saw Sven Mackenberg at turn 1 go wide in the DP, and then into turn 1 there, Alessandro Botti not only losing first, but second as well, as a result of breaking into turn number 1. We'll see how they get on this time, Zach, and I don't know if it was just cold brakes, but they don't look like they're particularly cooperative into turn 1.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I mean, the car is demanding a lot of the brakes into turn 1, and couple that without any ABS, it is going to be a little bit tricky. But I was watching a couple of onboards earlier on of people braking into turn 1 on their hot laps, and yeah, it is very easy to lock up. Sven Mackenberg under a bit of pressure from Pavan, who's having a bit of a look, bit of a fight as well amongst some of the Porsches. Outside line for Pavan. Is he going to sail the long way around to turn number 1, or is it going to be the German of Sven Mackenberg, who just about manages to hang on for the lead this time by everyone, though, cleanly through turn 1, no lockups, at least this time through. How about the GTs running their way in towards turn number 1? And Tomeno, well, he's got a lot of Porsche surrounding him.
Yeah, this is an incredible fight between Mackenberg, between Pavan, between Botti as well. The three of them pulling away. Mackenberg now given a 6/10 lead. That is on the left-hand side of your screen. On the right-hand side, it is a battle between Bertrand Barriere, between Alejandro Tomino, between Vultrick as well, who's also involved in this fight. They're going to go side by side up towards the King. It's not normally one that would work. The up and under towards the West Horseshoe. It is Barriere at the front of this group, but the up and under potentially from Florian Vultrick might well give him the position. Alas, there is nothing on this occasion, and still they hang firm. They hang fire and they hold position. At least for now, but yes, very dramatic indeed. Joining the fight as well, Raphael Heinrich as well. Bit of a moment there from Tomino, and this could be Vultrick around the outside, up into NASCAR 1 and 2, and that looked like a pretty easy move that's still not complete.
Yeah, still not complete right now, and don't forget the GTEs, of course, a bit of a smaller field than we've got in a couple of the other categories here in this race today, but more than half of them are involved right here. 8 of them in the race, as you can see, and more than half of them involved in this group for the positions a little bit further down in the order. Looks like Tomeno has been able to get himself away from them just a little bit in these last couple of moments, and hopefully he can get away from them now. Florian Vultrick is just behind, or the driver behind, and then it goes on from there as we go back to the leaders. Pavan again struggling on the brakes into turn 1. This car really does not stop, and Alessandro Botti is not going to stop himself from getting second place by the looks of it. He'll get through, and Sven Mackenberg will just open up a little bit of a margin here. Zach, turn 1 is really, really tricky in this Daytona prototype, and as a result, I'm quite concerned about the traffic when we roll around to it.
Yeah, as we were saying, it's just not going to be ideal. I have to really be careful and not take too many risks, because they don't need to. I mean, you're going to get through eventually. Yes, they're in a very close fight for the lead. Well, that's actually not too close for the lead, because Sven Mackenberg is sort of just deciding to take this opportunity to check out and run away with it. But certainly a close fight for their respective positions. They do just have to be careful into turn 1 at Daytona. Oftentimes you find yourself, trying to turn into the corner, off the banking as well, onto some flat ground, while also turning. That's asking a lot of the front tyres, and yeah, it's just not ideal. So for these guys, as I say, be very, very careful, very, very cautious. and try not to ram into the rear end of any GT cars, because that's not going to be pleasant for anyone's day. Still a long race to go. There's no real need to be sending moves on slower cars, at least this early on. Maybe later on we're going to see some more desperate dives because people feel that desperation, but at least for now, Lewis, you've just got to be careful, take it easy.
Yeah, we're focused on the prototype category, we're focused on the GTEs, but let's take a look into our GT3 category. Zabdir taking the race lead on the race start. Dvořákov alongside second position Guibert, who we're on board with at the moment. Rui Felipe dropping back a few positions on the race start there as Alessandro Botti and Parvin once again switch over. I don't know, so maybe Parvin's gone wide at the first corner again. Who knows? He definitely is struggling with those brakes, but as we keep our eye on the race lead for GT3, is there going to be a switch here at the moment? Is the Swiss driver going to try and find his way past his Polish rival at the moment? I think not. It's going to be a bit about bump drafting, a bit about slipstream, a bit about advantage like that until the prototypes come through the McLaren that I've got to say, we've commentated quite a lot on Zabdir over the recent past. Every time I see him in GT3, he's always in that McLaren. He loves black and gold, and he loves that McLaren. Gets along with it very well. And it does help in races like this. When you come along, you're already at one with the car. You already know what to expect from the vehicle.
I could have sworn he ran one of the Corvettes during at least one of the rankings challenges we had last year.
He might run he did run once.
Yeah.
Went back to the 720.
He certainly does like it. It's proving quite well for him right now. And by the way, with no disrespect to the other categories, but I think the GT3 category has the strongest entry of any in this field. You see Zabdir currently leading, Dvořákov, Guibert, Rui Felipe, who was on pole by the way, he's in 4th place. We've got Rosen here in 6th. Nikolai Kowski currently battling away for 6th place. Not able to get through right now in that Porsche. But all of those drivers, absolutely top tier, of the race room scene. We see them all the time competing up for the top prizes and so on. They're really, really strong drivers. No disrespect to the other categories, of course, but a very, very strong GT3 category we have as we go side by side in the Daytona prototype category. Parvan versus Botti. We'll see. Oh, who gets the braking zone right? There's contact. Botti was on the grass trying to slow that down, and somehow he manages it. Parvan will stay in second, Zach, but Botti is not pleased.
No, and very much showing his displeasure with a couple of flashes of the headlights just to say, yeah, no, and a little bit wide in towards the international horseshoe, whether that be intentional or by mistake. Parvan actually still fighting, and there's still more contact. Both of them sent off onto the grass. That's going to invite Quat through into second place, rejoining the circuit, still maybe even fighting it out for now third place. Parvan is in third, Alessandro Botti settling for 4th. Neither of them are going to be liking that too much. Deep again goes Parvan. It's going to be deja vu through the western horseshoe. This time though, neither of them off, and Botti up to third. That was an awkward affair, Lewis.
Awkward's a way of putting it. I don't think it's been particularly great, that run there, and it doesn't seem to be continuing for Parvan. I will say, when you get dirt onto your tyres in RaceRoom, it does affect the grip massively. I think that might well have been some of the problem there with them getting stopped through the midsection. But still, that was pretty poor when it came to the contact between the two of them. And Greta's thought, fantastic, that's hilarious. See ya. As he is checked out, Parvan now having to worry about Hout, who's behind him, and Kilman as well. They've not even got up to lapping the GT3s, which are on the right-hand side of your screen, but they will be in, let's say, 4-5 laps time. It's really not going to be long before they're heading through at least the back end of them. And you can see on the right hand side behind Cody Nikola Latkovsky, that's Yuval Rosen and Deimiko, as well as Mikhail Lapanik coming into contact, running through the mid portion, or rather exiting that central loop and coming back out into NASCAR 1 and 2. That was dicey, shall we say. We do always see a bit of an attempt of a move coming down into, was it turn 6, isn't it? Is the official number of that corner. Do always see a couple of dives coming down to it, and that one really wasn't so ideal.
No, I mean, none of that was really that ideal, to be honest. I think Botti and Parvan are particularly displeased with each other, actually, after that altercation. It has allowed Sven Mackenberg to get miles out in front of the lead as the Daytona prototypes settle themselves down for the next few minutes. The guys in GT3 pushing one another. Dvořákov in a bit of a GT3 sandwich at the moment and trying to get himself out of it. Defend his second position as well. Zabdir will have so much speed going in towards turn number 1 there. Manages to pull it up in time. But we're seeing a great GT3 race here, Zach. The top 4 very much getting away. The battle for 5th place is not exactly dying down either.
Yeah, Drovosek sandwich between the two, the McLaren and the Ferrari in towards the attachment horseshoe. A little bit shaky there from Bieber, but the top four really going at it, and I'm just loving this completely. Zabdir is controlling the pace, controlling the field as it stands. He has got Drovosek, Bieber, and Philippe just in behind, all hammering the pressure on. And well, you can't stay strong, you can't stay that composed for so long. At some point, maybe we could see Zabdir break, and that's then when we're going to see Drovosek, Bieber, and Philippe maybe try and find their way through. And if they continue to fight, they might bring the likes a 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, all of them guys back into the mix as well. But so far, early doors in this race, well, there's no shortage of action at all. Everyone bringing their best, bringing their A game, and well, honestly, I am just all here for it, because if we get the next 2 hours and 11 minutes of this, we're definitely going to be we're going to be needing a lot of drinks after that. We're going to be quite dehydrated, let's put it that way. The Frenchman Aguiba in towards the Le Mans chicane, but all calm right now. I have to say though, this feels like sort of a calm before the storm. It's not going to take much to sparkle this off.
Yeah, only 12 minutes into the race, and Zach is already calling for a beer. Terrible. He is.
No.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Mario Zabdir, though, continues to lead in the GT3 category, of course, and Drovosek not really gone for anything as of yet. He's just sat there using the rear, pushing Zabdir out a little bit. You obviously bump drafting a touch. I don't have a problem with it, Ewan. I'm sure some people have done when it comes to GT3s and bump drafting. But it's got to be said that sometimes you can enforce a mistake like that. Too much speed into turn one, and Zabdir has gone, just carrying more speed than expected down into the first corner, courtesy of Drovosek being sat there. And Zabdir is going to drop back to 4th position. Of course, that's not really the main reason why Drovosek was doing it. More so for better speed, but more importantly, Ewan, better fuel mileage, which will be very helpful as this race goes on, as we would approach that pit stop window, as they'll all come into the pit lane. They'll all need to pit twice in this race, realistically, with the race distance that we're going. It is too much, right? They couldn't do it on one tank.
No, you wouldn't expect it to do on
Not
one
around
tank.
here.
No, I mean, we didn't even. I think we saw one or two think about attempting it in the Spa 2.4H. I don't know if you were there for that, Lewis, but I think we did see a couple try it there. Around here, not really. I wouldn't expect to see it, although I don't quite remember if anybody even tried it last year in 2022. I'm sure that people will be stopping twice in all three categories, to be honest. It's just a case right now for these four of staying together, especially for Felipe and Zabdir. They want to stay with the leaders, and I think Felipe has decided there's a better chance of that if Zabdir is back in front again. The McLaren just couldn't cope with the grip, or couldn't cope with the turn in at turn one there, and just had to make a small correction, went out wide and lost 3 places as a result. I don't think it split this group quite up for good, Zach, but there was a danger of that becoming 2 groups of 2 there.
Yeah, it could have very easily happened, but fortunately I think Zabdir's back on his feet and pushing back forward, and yeah, as long as you're under sort of a second gap, you're sort of in the clear. You can sort of make that time back up and stay within the slipstream fairly easily. Anything beyond that is fairly sort of difficult, and yeah, you've got to say it's going to take sort of a mistake or I don't even know, something pulled from God knows where to be able to close that gap. But we still have got our 4 at the front, and it just goes to show that even with the assists available in the GTs, Daytona still isn't too easy to tame. It's not just the fastest class of the Daytona prototypes. It's still these guys as well that can quite easily struggle, and again, could very easily be a battle of attrition, as again is proven by the Italian.
Yeah, that was D'Amico going for a bit of a spin. Was actually around Greaser, who's in 10th position now. I wonder if there was contact between the two of them. I think there has been the position revoked, or returned rather, as the streak also comes through after earlier issues from him. Lapanetic involved in there in the BMW M6 in the background. It's all very dicey in this little grouping. And like I say, I suspect that one will continue up toward the Le Mans chicane. With these being down the order, I mean, yeah, there's no major prize up front today, but you see how it's, top honours, etc., etc. You want to go out there and have a little bit of fun, but you want to go out there and get the best result possible. It is a race at the end of the day, and battling tooth and nail over 10th, 11th, 12th position in that GT3 category is not how you go and get a good result around here, because the side-by-side, those battles will cost you an awful lot of time.
Yeah, they will, as we've seen already. Groups being split apart by those kind of battles. I mean, they're very entertaining, and We did previously have one for 5th place, but that's all split up now, and it's really gone down to 10th place in the GT3s now, as opposed to where the real battles are. There is this free car train, of course, for the lead, and it is getting interesting. Zabdir, the only one of the three who really is looking for overtakes right now. I do agree with the point you made earlier about fuel saving, and that it's a better position to do that for the pole right now, but he doesn't seem to want to really fuel save at the moment, Zach. He seems to be the only one really looking to move forward.
Yeah, he wants that track position, and I mean, I'm not complaining because he's putting on a really good show, but I guess maybe he wants to be in control as opposed to fuel save, and have that track position, as we said, can be quite important. You can see there that the Ferrari of Giba is putting up quite a bit of a fight versus the pole, who, yeah, it's not having an easy time working his way back towards the front of the field. Definitely, if I was him, as you've both said, is just chill, lift off, coast, save the fuel, and win the race in the pit lane, because I think that is where it's going to be decided. In races as close as this, and drivers so close on pace, that the top echelon of esports really on RaceRoom amongst these guys, particularly in the GT3 class, it's not going to be. It's not going to be too easy to separate them, to distinguish them. It's going to be a case of who makes the better call on strategy, and if that could be Zabdir, he's going to be laughing sort of in 2 hours' time, where the strategies have really filtered themselves out. And if he can start now, play the patient game, play the long game, he could really be in a good position later on.
Well, we did take a quick look at Luca Vullstrich earlier on the back of the GT3 category. Well, Florian Vullstrich has actually made up a position getting past Torino inside the GTE category. Other close battles inside each of the categories. In the Pro Cycle category, the only one that is particularly close is the one between Kilman and Hout, are over 5th position. That is the only one that is tight there. In the GT3s, though, it is the fight for the podium positions, the fight for the race lead as well. Drovosekov holding on to it as Enzo Guibez involved in it. Zabdir, Rui Felipe again, the four that are battling over there. You can see in the background there is the Porsche of Cody Nikola Latkovsky. Of course, the Macedonian trying to rejoin this fight, as out wide goes Zabdir. Rui Felipe almost involved. I do agree with you wholeheartedly. It is no disrespect to either of the other categories, Ewan. The prototype category and the GT category are both very competitive, very difficult to win, especially if you have Mackenberg in your lane. But the GT3 category is just so stacked in this. I mean, the top 5 in there, the top 6 in there, we expect to take part in quite a lot of full-on proper esports competitions over here in RaceRoom, whether they are just doing the RaceRoom Ranked Championship, or a couple of them taking part over in the ADA GT Masters, DTM Esports, as well as the newly running WTCR Esports Championship, which started on Wednesday, seeing the likes of Yuval Rosen in there, and Drovosekov. It is a very, very competitive field. It is a very hard one to win. And certainly if I had the choice of category, it wouldn't be the one that I'd be going for right now. I'd probably hedge my bet for the prototype right now.
I would agree, not only because of the thing about being in control of traffic and so on, that's always a benefit of being as a prototype driver, I would argue, but also it's so hard to win this GT3 race, and it wasn't quite the same last year really. It was a real bit of domination from Marvin Mackenberg in one of the older generation Chevrolet Corvettes that we had on that particular occasion. Won by really quite a long way and was rarely out of the lead. It couldn't be more of a different story here on this occasion. It's very, very close indeed. I mean, as you mentioned, you'd expect to see these guys in kind of esports competitions, and you'd expect to see them right up towards the top drivers in the world on RaceRoom here in this category. That was aggressive though from Zabdir. Enzo Guibert will not be very pleased with that move, because it was a bit of a dive, but there was certainly room to get there. Hard one to call, really.
Yeah, it was a bit of a send, but I mean, he's made it stick, and unfortunately it's just a case of the Frenchman's come off worse. Philippe's not going to be complaining too much on that Audi, able to work his way up onto the podium, and here we go. Ben Mackenberg already onto the back of the first wave of traffic. This is going to be a crucial one for him. Fortunately, over the course of sort of the first 20 minutes of the race, he's been able to build himself up a margin that he's not really pressured to work his way through fairly quickly through these. He can just pick them off one by one and get their way through. Fortunately, they should be fairly nice to them. Of course, they don't have to dive out the way, they're not going to put up sort of make it too difficult for him, and Ben Mackenberg shouldn't have too difficult and of a job working through. And as he gets towards the end of that pack, it's right as they go onto the oval where the biggest difference between the prototypes and the GTs are, which is straight line speed, and he should see himself sail around the traffic.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. As I think Alessandro Botti's had a problem. Alessandro Botti has had a problem, has dropped back. It certainly wasn't to do with lap traffic, hadn't quite reached them by that point, but still has gone for a bit of a spin either way, and Alessandro Botti drops almost to the rear end of the prototype field. But I absolutely agree with you. There's a few drivers, a few teams in this grid where they're kind of separated from the grouping going through lap traffic. This is not one of them. Villacrevi and Rocas de B. Now, obviously, the GTEs will struggle to get through the GT3s even more so. Now, yes, they haven't caught them yet, but when you are Villacrevi and you've got Rocas de B directly behind you, you are going to have a few more issues coming through traffic. Now, yes, that gap is a second, but it has been fairly consistently below half a second, and I'd suspect it will head back down there.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing very, very close times across the field, to be honest. Sven Mackenberg is in around the 140s at very best right now. The worst of the GT3s are in the 149s. You know, it's a 9-second spread of field across 3 categories, which is really quite small. So when you, go, whether it's Daytona prototype to GTE or GTE to GT3, that's really not a big pace difference at all, and it's going to be very, very awkward in traffic in moments. I even think the Daytona prototypes are going to have a bit of a trouble time through the GT3s on occasion, and this group is certainly going to experience that. Cody Nikolakowski has done a very good job to get onto the back of these guys to make a leading group of 5. Well, just about, he's nearly there, and the Daytona prototypes may well just split this all up once again, Zach. It's really where this race is won and lost.
Yeah, expect it to sort of fluctuate, chop and change as the race develops, as we go through more waves of traffic, as drivers come into the pit lane. That is where we're going to see sort of the spread start to materialise. But let's just enjoy the close racing while we can, and hope that it sort of remains this way. So far it has been the case. So far it is remaining the case. Fleet maybe having a bit of a look for second place. That is going to be eyed up by Drovasekov to say, yeah, go on then, go for it. Go fight for second so I can run off and lead the way. Giebert as well, having a bit of a look in towards turn number 1. Is Philippe going to go for the dive? Is the Ferrari going to go the long way around? Everyone just settling in, staying where they are, and no way throughs for the time being. Yeah, Philippe, I think, is getting punchy with this group. He worked his way back in, got ahead of the Ferrari Giebert after he was sent by Zabdir, and is now sort of making a name for himself. You know, it's really consolidating himself in this lead fight up there in third.
Yeah, I don't think Ezra Gibbert is going to be particularly pleased with what happened between himself and Mario Zabdir, and I think it's rightfully so, because I don't actually think that move was properly on. I think Zabdir was moving well away from the apex, heading into the International Horseshoe a couple of laps ago. It is what it is. That is racing. It is tough. It is hard. The two of them came together, and fair enough. You've got to bury that and move on. But alas, that's what's happened. Now, once the prototypes, by the way, catch them, I think there might well be a couple of problems when it comes to a 5-car group, because typically when, let's say, a group of the prototypes comes through, now yes, they are separated a fair amount, but that is what could well cause the issues. Let's see if Pasemko can make his way around the outside of Bertrand Barriere, who is sat in 6th position at the moment. Bit of a slide and a tank snapper there for Pasemko, and Heinrich as well sat behind the yellow flag to come out once again. That might be for Ruben Marquez.
Quite possibly. We'll wait and see. Of course, there's been quite a few yellow flags, by the way, throughout the race. I'm sure you've been noticing up the top of the screen. But so far, the leaders are absolutely all fine. As you can see here, the GT3s still battling away, sparks flying, and pushing through the banking as well, through NASCAR turns 3 and 4, which is not always advised. These GT3s a little bit more downforce than you see in actual NASCAR races, I suppose, so you can get away with it a bit more, but even so, not always advised. Zabdir not going down the inside, though, into turn 1. Rui Felipe, though, is having a really quiet race, though, here. I feel as if he's just holding something back at the moment, Zach, and he's just, taking his time a little bit with this race. Maybe we'll see him come to the fore a little bit later on in this one, because he's had a quiet one so far, unlike these two who are battling side by side for the lead.
Well, he said it was quiet, but he's pouncing on this opportunity to get involved. Drovazekov and Zabdir fighting over the lead. It was another send from the McLaren in towards the International Horseshoe. Is it going to be another one in towards the Western? No, he's going to stay nice and sensible. But yeah, Ruud Philippe is, playing the long game. He's chilling in third place, not really under much pressure, not really putting much pressure on, and is just, he's composed, he's calm. But as soon as he sees an opportunity to work way forward, he's going to pounce on it, rather than sort of initiating those opportunities and being proactive. He's more reactive. As soon as something sparks in front, he then pounces on it, and I think that's a good mentality to have. Other than that, stay calm, stay chill, and just play the long game, save your fuel, save your tyres, as we say. Now Sven Mackenberg, this is where it could get spicy when you're lapping and they're fighting for the lead.
It's close. It is a bit scary though when you come through at these kind of speeds. I almost thought when we were riding on board there, I thought that there was a car going slow and pulling off to one side and exiting the race. That's not the case. That's just the speed differential between the GT3s and the prototypes. We ride back on board with Sven Mackenberg. It is a perfect run past the leaders. Not a worry in sight. 1, 2, 3, 4 ticked off. Sven Mackenberg clear from the GT3s, but we'll be coming up to the back of the GTEs as once again there is a potential switch. Further back from that is Enzo Guibert having the issues. Cody Nikola Latkovsky has come through, and once again Zabdir's going for the race lead in the GT3s, heading down into the first corner, and that could have been the switch, but once again is not going to be so. Drovazekov hangs on for now.
Certainly does, and well, into an International Horseshoe at least he does. Zabdir again. Oh, he didn't really get the apex there. Drovazekov was ready for it, and so gave a little bit of extra room. But they avoid contact just about. That, by the way, for Sven Mackenberg was the type of run through traffic that prototype drivers actually dream about at night, I'm pretty sure, because that was unbelievably good for him. I don't want to say lucky. You kind of make your own look, I suppose. He's far out in the lead. Look at how hard Rogers is having to work in the traffic right now, having to go through on some of these cars in the infield. He's going to get 4 of them on the banking here, and he should get at least most of them into the bus stop chicane. But it's an absolute dream for Sven Mackenberg there, Zach, and he's able to get further out in front, as we're going to see the rest of the prototypes now try and come through. We'll see if they get quite as lucky.
Bit of a fight for the podium now. It's the Swiss driver of Rooterick that's able to get himself up ahead of Deby, and well, this is quite a close fight actually, the closest really of anyone in their car, well, for sort of front running positions, but yeah, Rooterick just able to now get himself up in a P3, 4.5 seconds though to Krevy in second. It's going to be a hard job, and I think it's just a case of maybe consolidating third place, working with Deby to move forward. There we go. There's some of the prototypes ducking and diving their way past some of the GTs, and when you start doing moves like that, when you have to go up and then down and up and down again, it can unsettle the car and quite easily go very, very wrong.
It's also not very clear to those that you are lapping, can be very, very scary, but alas, Cody Nikola Latkovsky's joined this fight as Ruud Philippe has made his way past Drovazekov, both of them, all 4 of them rather, pulling clear of Enzo Guibert now to the tune of about 2 seconds. That car coming through, by the way, was Daniel Parvin, Kilman and Hout, the next 2 to come through when it comes to the prototypes on this grouping, heading into the International Horseshoe. Out wide was Zabdir, we ride on board with Cody Nikola Latkovsky. There's Parvin pulling away from the groups. Like you say, Kilman and Hout will be coming through and potentially causing a couple of scares for this group, causing a couple of scares between each other, having to get under the brakes, maybe a little bit too much though, coming down to the West Horseshoe, and Kilman could be under attack as we've got all 4 of these battling over the race lead in the GT3s. Now, thankfully for the prototypes, Ewan, they do have a lot of downforce, yes, but with the way these prototypes work, where they make up the main speed differential is with that massive engine they've got in the back, they absolutely fly around this part of the circuit.
Yeah, they're not actually that much quicker through the infield, really, especially not from the GTEs, as we'll see a little bit later on, but they're going to be able to get all 4 of these on the banking here before the bus stop. Maybe just about the McLarens as well. Yep, they're all going to get there. So Zabdir can pull back into line and they can resume their battle, as can the drivers for 4th place in the overall race. But you see when the corners come through, I mean, the bus stop a little bit more of a high speed chicane, so the prototypes like that a little bit more, but through the infield there really isn't much to choose between them, Zach, and that's a bit of a dream for that Daytona prototype as well. That's Alessandro Ponti on a bit of a recovery drive in 6th place, and the GT3 is going to be very pleased about that as well. They've got most of the Daytona prototypes through without really being broken up here.
Yeah, they're going to be loving that. Maybe a move for the race lead for Philippe inside line as they run across the start-finish line in towards turn number 1. Outside line for Zabdi, who just able to tuck his nose ahead. There's a send from Nikola Latovsky all the way around the outside of Jovasekov up in a 3rd place. Maybe he wants to go for 2 as well, side by side with Philippe as they run their way in towards the International Horseshoe. The Porsche has really come out of nowhere, really been chipping away at the gap of this fight, and is now working his way up in his 2nd place in this race. Inside line for the International Horseshoe, late on the brakes, and now the Macedonian is into 2nd place. What a move, and really, Lewis, he just came out of nowhere side by side between Jovasekov and Philippe, but wow, Nikola Latovsky, what a move, and what a sequence of moves actually for him, up and now into 2nd place.
Yep, 2 moves in 2 corners. Cody Nikola Latkowski making himself known in the scene of the GT3 category here at the 2.4H Daytona on RaceRoom. That was absolutely sensational from the Macedonian. Next one to pick off would be Zabdir, but then comes the question, do you really want to lead right now? Which normally, again, you'd always say yes, but I'd rather lead in an hour and 52 minutes than with an hour and 52 left to go in this race. Do you need to lead now? The answer is no to that one. Sit behind and save fuel, but that Porsche is absolutely flying at this point. Rui Felipe having a bit of an issue behind, and Cody Nikola Latkowski getting to the outside. Could he be going for the lead up towards the Le Mans chicane? He sends it in, and that could be Latkowski straight up to the top with a super send. It's 3 cars in 1 lap, and Cody Nikola Latkowski takes over the lead in the GT3 category. Absolutely sensational here at the moment. Zabdir sat back thinking, sorry, who are you and where did that come from? He's going to try and come straight back through with a drag race up towards the line as they head over the start-finish straight. It will be Latkowski leading, it will be Zabdir behind, but the slipstream and the bump drafting coming from Jovasekov onto the rear end of Cody Nikola Latkowski as Zabdir could be going in deep at T1, Ewan.
And he is going to. Oh, Jovasekov got a little bit loose as well, though. Oh, and that's close through the S's. Zabdir's probably going to dive here again, though. He does like this one at the International Horseshoe. Oh, that's aggressive contact made between the two. Jovasekov's going to be not pleased about that. I think there's a little bit of weaving to just show his displeasure with that one. They've got to be careful, though, here. Nikola Latkowski is going to get away if they're not too smart with this one. He's been very, very quick. He had problems in the opening moments, but since then, he's been able to catch and pass everybody, and now there's a danger he'll get away.
Yeah, these guys have got to watch out. They've got to keep their wits about them and stop Nikola Latovsky from getting away. Yeah, he really was just a dark horse, drove his way onto the back of these guys, did not wait around to seize his moment, seize his chance, and get up into the race lead. So now it's a chance for sort of these guys to settle down and to have a bit of, come back down to earth a bit, have a reality check and say, okay, yeah, no, we're not as invincible in this race as we once thought. So now we need to sort of knuckle down, work together, and get to the front. But that might not actually be the case for Zabdir. Inside line now for the Le Mans chicane, wants to lead the charge and not giving it up at all as the Swiss driver Jovasekov, who hangs it around the outside. They're doing the complete opposite of what they want to do if they want to remain in the lead fight of this race.
Yeah, that was, again, crazy to give that one a go. But Zabdir has been past 2 consecutive laps into the Le Mans chicane. It's baffling when you have it, because you're starting to be like, is my car just throwing a straight line? Am I bad going into NASCAR 1 and 2? Well, the switch might happen once again, showing the straight line speed of the McLaren 720 seems to be perfectly fine comparatively to the Mercedes that it's just got past, and Zabdir retakes over 2nd position. But Cody Nikola Latkowski using all of the grunt of the flat 6 to pull away from that grouping behind. And once again, Rui Felipe sat there watching these two ahead and might well be closing in. Enrique Bear, I wouldn't necessarily say is out of the fight. Could close back in after a couple of dramas over the last couple of laps. And that's desperately what he'll be thinking of now. But will it be for the race lead, or is Latkowski checking out?
Yeah, it looks like Latkowski is getting away here. There's just no cooperation between Zabdir and Jovasekov at all. Well, I guess you could call it cooperation. It's illusion of time. They are just under a second away from Latkowski at the moment, but if they battle too much harder, they are going to lose the draft of the leader and possibly lose the chance of winning this race. It seems crazy to say nearly 2 hours from the end, but that's very much a possibility. That very much could happen here in this race. If you lose the draft of the leader, then you really have had it. And the Porsche looks very strong in the straight line as well here, Zach. 8 tenths of a second, creeping up to 9. There does need to be a bit of working together here from Zabdir and Jovasekov.
Yeah, it's crunch time now. It's the deciding moment, and yeah, you're right in saying, in the sense that you do have to. It starts now. It's not a case of, oh, it's fine, we'll catch up later on in the race. It's a case of, no, it's the same race that we're running later on. If we mess ourselves up now, we're going to be, kicking ourselves later on, in the sense that we've missed an opportunity. It's that knock-on effect. It all starts now. You've got to poise yourself perfectly for the remainder of the race. And if you fight too hard now, it gets to that point of no return where no amount of pace, no amount of strategy is going to save you, because, well, I think our new race leader, seems fairly bulletproof in terms of mistakes. Touch wood, we might see that change as the race progresses. But so far, so good. And, the charge that he's had, he's going to be full of confidence. And, the likes of Zabdir, Drobosekov, they're going to be sort of taken aback a little bit, maybe knocked out of their rhythm a bit, and that's going to be, again, another thing that Lotowski can use his advantage to pull away. But so far, Zabdir has done a good job of just keeping that gap under a second, and that's going to be vital to stay in contention for the race. As soon as they start battling again, make any mistakes, as soon as Lotowski sort of bridges that gap even more, I think it is going to be a case of reaching that point of no return, and we could see Nikolai Lotowski just run away with it.
Yeah, it's kind of, I agree with you. I think when Latkovsky got there, the fact that he pounced so quickly was actually really, really important, because he caught everyone off guard. Whilst, yes, Zabdir was focused on the fight between Drobosekov and Felipe, and sure, I mean, it's still another car joining the fight. It wouldn't have been that crazy. But still, there is that kind of that mentality of, I've been battling with a Mercedes, I've been battling with an Audi R8. But wait, where's this Porsche come from? Is that actually for position, or is it like, who is that? Is that a GTE that's just come through? And then by the time you've actually worked out, oh right, that was actually for position, Latkovsky's gone. He's 1 second clear, and like you were saying, Ewan, that car does seem fast enough on the straights to keep those in tow, which normally with a Porsche we don't typically associate it with decent straight line speed. We normally associate it with decent drive off, particularly through that central section. But alas, here seems to be plenty fast enough to keep those at bay behind. But if Drobosekov and Zabdir go working together, as we've seen with Drobosekov, more than happy to bump draft NASCAR style. Obviously we are racing at Daytona Beach. That's where that gap can disappear very, very quickly, and I think realistically it kind of has.
It's sort of fluctuating at the moment, I don't think we're giving all the credit to the Porsche. You've got to give some credit to Cody Nicola Latkovsky as well, the fastest of the drivers who were in this race, the fastest qualifier. I think he was third overall. Fastest of the drivers that are actually in this race right now in terms of qualification. I think he qualified second or third as well, was right up there. Clearly had some kind of problem that we missed on the opening lap or the opening moments of this race, because he found himself in that big battle for what was 6th place at the time, 5th, 6th place. He eventually battled his way through that, and now he's out in the lead. It's a remarkable recovery and a remarkable rise through the field for Cody Nicola Latkovsky. He's got a very, very long way to take this one home just yet. And a lot is going to happen between now and then, Zach, including the GTE traffic, which is going to come through pretty soon for the very first time in this race.
Yeah, well, it's going to be Marvin Mackenberg, and then quite a little while later it'll be Krevy working his way through as well. But yeah, certainly the GTEs are going to at some point, get onto the back of these guys. While the difference between GTEs and the GT3s aren't quite as big between the prototypes and the GT3s, there is still going to be some lapping, and with still an hour and 3/4 left to go in this race, still quite a few more beyond that as well. It is going to be a different dynamic of lapping though for the GTEs, because in some senses they've got to work a little bit harder than the prototypes do. They can't just floor around the banking. They can't, there's not really much difference through the infields. They've got to work their way through a little bit more cleverly on the GT3s. Those.
Yeah, their percentage of speed differential is obviously a lot lower. That's why they're the middle class. But there is, the way you're lapping in the GTEs rather, versus lapping in the Daytona prototypes. Yeah, in the prototypes, you come out onto the banking, and like you say, you put the pedal down and off you go. There's downforce wise, the GT3s are actually pretty fast coming through the traffic, as there is Marvin Mackenberg getting his way past. That'll be Yuval Rosen. He's trying to make his way through. This is what we're seeing. And like I say, the straight line speed differential won't be too great between them, but the cornering speed and the braking, that's where the GTE will make most of its differential versus the GTEs, comparatively to how the prototype does. Which means for me, the GTEs is a much harder car to go and do the whole lapping process, and that's before you even account that it is the middle class here, which Ewan, we've discussed before in our endurance racing commentary careers time and time again. I don't know if you do agree, I'm pretty sure we will kind of line up on this one. The middle category is almost always the hardest when it comes to multi-class racing, because you're focused on those coming round, you've also got to focus on those that you're getting through, you've got to do all that cleanly, and you've got to fight amongst yourselves. It's just, there's just always something going on in that middle category.
Yeah, there is, and I feel like we often use that in the context of a prototype multi-class race where there's some really not just Daytona prototypes, but the modern day LMP2s or even the LMP1s of old coming through. And we speak about the LMP2 drivers having a hard time, but I actually think the GTEs in this championship, in IMSA racing generally, when they were there, they have the hardest time of anyone in endurance racing just at all, because the speed difference is just not that big between the Daytona prototypes right down to the GTEs. The field spread is a lot smaller, so GTEs have to work very, very hard to make their overtakes, and it's really awkward when the Daytona prototypes have to come through as well. Very, very awkward indeed. So I do think they have the hardest job in all of sim racing, you could argue, and that's what Marvin Mackenberg is going to do right now, Zach. But he's bought himself a 12-second lead, so he doesn't need to worry too much. It's about for second when GT3 continues.
Yeah, I mean, similar to Sven Mackenberg with the prototypes, he's got enough of a gap where he can just take his time, be more rational with his decisions, pick his way through a little bit more cleanly, and still turn out with a fairly sizable lead at the end of it. I will say I do agree with sort of both of you in the sense that it's difficult doing the lapping and being lapped for the middle class in endurance races, because it's very easy to get overwhelmed. When you're doing the lapping, you've got to be mindful that the slower car doesn't do anything sort of erratic and dance in front of you at any point. You've got to use your experience to not get involved in anything, but also being lapped, you're putting a lot of trust in the cars around you not to slam into the side of you, brake too late, going into a corner. You're carrying that trust, and in some cases you really are a passenger. So the middle class is very difficult, but for everyone I think it's just endurance racing is such a mammoth task to overcome. It takes experience and just event after event after event to really get the hang of it, really get a grasp of what's going on, and to be the best you just have to do it over and over again, and in each and every category, to be able to put yourself into the shoes of those around you, to sort of get an idea as to what they're going to do, and use that to best that experience to best prepare yourself for other categories in endurance racing. But yeah, I think endurance racing in of itself is just, it's a different kettle of fish altogether. You've got the same sort of difficulties of any other discipline, but also the weight of attrition and consistency on your shoulders as well.
Well, whilst we ride on board with Marvin Mackenberg, we focus a little bit on the GTE category as he laps those leads in the GT3s. Whilst we focus on GTEs, there's actually a little bit of a battle further down. Heinrich's just got through on Tamino in the GT3s. That'll be on the run down towards turn 1, as there is Heinrich. You've got a bit of lap traffic in the form of Mikael Lapanek, again in that BMW M6. Heinrich will work his way past that, but there's a little hip check as well. Position switch there, but also De Monte and Bertrand Barriere also pretty close, 7th and 8th. I think there might have been a switch between the pair of those as well. It's all Porsches back in the GTE category, but a couple of tight little switches in there. Tamino, who we've seen be pretty fast earlier on in this race, might well have burnt out those tyres. Not normally something that we deal with too much around Daytona. Tyres are normally okay, as Zabdir gets dived down the inside by GTE race leader Marvin Mackenberg coming up into the launch. Does that count as 3 moves on the inside of him into the launch game? Does that count? Not really.
I don't know.
Not really.
I don't think Marvin Mackenberg will care, to be honest. He's just trying to go. I think it was definitely dicey, to be honest, with Zabdir. And I don't think the pole would have been very pleased to see the GTE down the inside, but either way, he has done, and they're going to continue on anyway. Latkovsky's doing such a good job at the front of GT3. It's been fantastic drive from him so far to get away in the way that he has, and it doesn't look like he can really be caught right now, even with these two finally working together now. He's still got that little bit of a margin, that little bit of a pace advantage as well, but the leading battle in Daytona Prototype, thankfully, is just kind of hotting up as this one cools down a little bit. Sven Mackenberg did have previously nearly 6 seconds of a lead in this race, but Rogers closed in. Less than a second now between the two of them as well. That's great to see for us here, Zach. And they're about to be in traffic again, I would imagine. They'll get through the GTEs and GT3s all at the same time. It could be very busy quite soon.
Yeah, it's going to really kick off very shortly. Jimeno and Dumont start by sliding towards the International Horseshoe in this fight for sixth. The Spaniard keeping himself honest and Dumont the long way round of the International Horseshoe has got the drive off the corner as they run their way in towards the kink, and then of course into the Western Horseshoe, and it is going to go the way of the Frenchman who consolidates the place for now. But yeah, I'm very glad that that Grot has been able to close the gap to Sven Mackenberg and liven things up. Don't forget that Daniel Parvin is closing the gap as well, only 2 seconds back. So what could have been sort of sheer domination for Sven Mackenberg, at least what it seemed to be. Didn't want to, cut it off too early or whatever, but what seemed to be maybe a runaway for Sven Mackenberg is now really hotting up. He's been chased back down again by the Norwegian and by the Romanian of Grot and Parvan. This could still be a very spicy race in the top flight of this race.
Well, we've already seen the beginnings of pit stops. The red marker is the requirement of one entry down into pit lane. There is a required pit stop, and obviously when it goes green, it means that required pit stop change. You've got to make a pit stop around here anyway. It's 2 hours 24 minutes this race, 144. You are going to be making a pit stop in that time. As much as there might be some fuel-saving masters out there, at least one trip down into pit lane is an inevitability. So we have seen Pasemko come down in the GTE category, as well as Alessandro Botti in the prototype category. But again, let's refocus our attention on the pit stops as Sven Mackenberg, race leader, comes down into pit lane, obviously splitting this race fairly evenly into thirds. Mackenberg and Parvin in. Do you like this strategy, Ewan, or not?
Well, I don't mind it. I think splitting it to thirds is a good idea. So we'll just, as long as they can do that, of course, it will be a two-stop race for pretty much every, especially in the Daytona prototypes, which I wouldn't expect to go too much further anyway. With nearly 50 minutes into this one, splitting into thirds seems like a good idea, and I don't think he would have liked the pressure from Grot behind. There's also the factor of the traffic coming up as well here, Zach. Avoiding this run-through traffic of GT3s and GTEs is probably a good idea, so I think Grot might well follow on this next lap, because otherwise he is going to find himself in a lot of traffic.
Yeah, it's the wise decision is to just cut your losses and come into the pit lane. Granted, maybe for these guys could be a little bit early. Maybe they could, in theory, carry on going. But if you've got a pit stop coming up and you've got the traffic as well, why run through the traffic and then come into the pit lane, only costing yourself more time? Because you could come in now, get some clear air, punch in those lap times, and then continue on. He is going to get sort of the first, little bits of traffic before he comes in to the pit lane. Definitely not going to help him having to take the inside line into the Le Mans chicane, but yeah, still going to be able to get at least a decent portion of it, and even little bits like that could allow Mackenberg to get the advantage. However, Daniel Parvin easily done at Daytona though, drive through for speeding in the pit lane.
Yeah, that is speeding in the pit lane, the first one potentially of many in this race, the Romanian being caught for it. Most likely it's on the entrance pit. I've said time and time again that the pit entry here is irritatingly difficult, right? It's kind of one of those ones that's you're not funneled into anything. There's no real big braking markers. You just kind of come in and it's so open, and sometimes that openness is what makes it difficult. You don't have as many references as you would do in a typical pit lane entry, and it catches you out. That's normally where it comes from. I don't suspect it would have been on the exit of pit lane, unless they've released the limit too early. Don't really know. But I would say it's probably more on the exit pit lane. But either way, a drive-through penalty, and so Parvin will have to come back through. That is a big, big shame. And Kilman, there we go. I said we were going to get one. Kilman, the next one to have picked up a speeding in the pit lane. And that is a big shame.
Yeah, it is, and you're right, the pit lane entry is so wide, and you just sort of guess, really, when you're on the way in, and it's not ideal particularly, so that's why Parvin has closed in so much on Sven Mackenberg, and I wondered why Mackenberg actually took things so comfortably and so cautiously into the pit lane, actually, but that's exactly why. Didn't want to drive through penalty for speeding, as through the traffic. Cody Nikola Latkowski has been caught by Ilya Drovasakov. and also, well, Zabdir earlier, but not anymore. The two of them trying to get away, maybe. I think Drobosakov would like to get away from the McLaren, if at all possible, over the next couple of moments, so we'll see how they get on there. But it looks like Kulmanzak has DNF'd after that, speeding in the pit lane. Looks like he's pulled his car in, and that'll be the end of his day.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame him. I can definitely relate to that in the sense that, honestly, have I actually just done that? And then it's just like, yeah, honestly, at this point, it's not going to be too fun continuing on. You're going to be out of the running. You're not realistically going to get anywhere, any reward out of this race. You're just going to be finishing it for the sake of it. So definitely I can relate with Kilman. It would have been nice for him to carry on and just, get it to the checkered flag, but we've all been there, we're all human, and it's all just a case of, no, not doing that again, not living through that. So it's fair play, and it saves him the embarrassment serving that penalty and then getting another one on top of that, because once you do that, then it is really just an old F4 moment, at least for me, Lewis.
Yeah, I mean, I've had... I mean, there was one time where I had a speeding in the pit lane penalty and then got another one whilst serving it. And I remember it to this day. I can tell you what year, what race, how it happened. Like, I know all around it. And I know how embarrassing it was. It is painful, it is embarrassing, and it does make you want to pull the internet cable out. And so I did. It was 2019. And championship called GBWC in a little Super Cup. It was not a fun experience. We could say that. It's easily done though, especially around circuits like this. And so you tick it off, you move on to the next one. I kind of think the 2.4 race pulling the plug was probably a little bit too early, but alas, that is the case, and they have made their move. That was Villacravy, by the way, coming through on Cody Nikola-Latkovsky, with still Drobosakov behind, 1.3 seconds back to Zabdir at the moment as more drivers come into the pit lane. A reminder as to when an hour is complete in this race, because that's the more thing as to where we're kind of expecting quite a lot of these contingents to come into the pit lane. That'll be with 1 hour and 24 minutes left to go, so roughly sort of 2 or 3 laps for quite a lot of these cars. We do expect a majority in. If anyone can get to 1 hour 12 left to go though, then they will be going for a one-stop strategy this afternoon, and that'll be a very brave call.
I can't see anybody even trying it really. Well, somebody might try and get there, but they might come in, 116 remaining or 115, and then decide that it's not going to happen and just do a splash and dash right with 10 minutes to go or something. Go a little bit harder in the rest of the race, because realistically, I think you've got to be in the top, maybe top 6, maybe top 9. To really benefit from actually not stopping again. You look at some of those outside the top 10 in GT3 right now. I know D'Amico has made a stop right now, but he's a long way back. Quite a lot of those drivers a long way back in the GT3 order. Same with GTE as well, where we are seeing a few more pit stops and even less of a chance of it making it work on one stop. So I can't see it being attempted, but it would be interesting and exciting to see as Marvin Mackenberg continues to run away from the rest of the field. And speaking of leaders, by the way, Sven Mackenberg, his brother, still leading in, or will be leading in Daytona Prototype, Zach. That gap has just extended to about 3 seconds to the Norwegian. So I think Mackenberg's decision to pit before they got into all of that traffic was a good idea, really, because it looks like Grotter's lost a bit of time going through it rather than going around it, if you like, by going in the pit lane.
Yeah, it wasn't even that much of traffic. It really mainly was only that one BMW that he caught into the Le Mans chicane, at least for what we saw for Christian Grott. But even that was enough to sort of allow Sven Mackenberg that margin, which I'm sure he's going to appreciate after so far dominating as Nikola Latkovsky's not going to like that from I think it's Alessandro Botti into the International Horseshoe, allowing Drobosakov to close the gap a bit. Nothing too major, but just pushed wide a little bit from the P2 running his way through. But Sven Mackenberg, I think, really hit the nail on the head in terms of strategy, and it is surely going to be a fairly comfortable two-stop for this race. Again, as we say, it's too risky to go for that one stop. It's sometimes better just to go with the norm, stick with what everyone else is doing, because saving fuel around Daytona, if you're not in a pack, is very, very difficult. You've got to be on full throttle for a good portion of a lot of the laps. You're demanding a lot of the engine, using a lot of fuel, so the one stop, probably not the best idea. And if you are going to get it, yes, you could crawl around at 50 miles an hour and barely use any fuel and quite easily do a one stop, but you're not going to finish very well. So I think definitely the quickest strategy is going to be that one stop, but it comes down to who's in packs where, who's been able to lift and coast at different points. All of those different factors attribute to different variations in terms of stint length.
I've got to say, the only GT3 to have come into the pit lane is D'Amico at the moment. I don't think it's going to be as easy for Sven Mackenberg, by the way, because Greta was closing in at quite a rate of knots and did get to the rear end of Mackenberg before Mackenberg pitted. The same could happen. Now, if that was Mackenberg worn tyres or something like that, right, and then got the new tyres on and then he pulled out a little bit of a gap, fair enough. But then at this point, he is on older tyres now than Christian Grota, and so that problem will be turned up even higher towards the end of this stint, you would expect, and then might have to pit even earlier to counteract that, and then will become even more of a problem towards the end of the race. So, I would not say it's the plainest of plain sailings from Sven Mackenberg. I will say the next 20 minutes are a very important part of this race to see who is going to win this prototype category, which, yes, I know, with an hour left to go even after that 20-minute period, but if that gap continues to grow and Sven Mackenberg is able to pull that one out even further, then yes, sure, Sven Mackenberg is the one that's in the more favourable line, but that isn't always what happens in these kinds of races. There is a bit of ebb and flow, there is a bit of traffic giving, traffic taking, and all that like. I don't think if you were Sven right now, you would be the most comfortable on the circuit. You'd be sat there and pondering what is to come.
Yeah, I do wonder why he got caught so much towards the end of that last stint as well. We were talking earlier about the fact that tyres really aren't that much of a factor around here, but I do wonder whether Mackenberg just took a little bit too much out of them in the opening moments. Grotto was a little bit more careful in the first few moments and then was able to push on a little bit later and close that gap down below a second at its smallest point. So I don't think the next 20 minutes are going to be that important, actually. I think it is going to be the next 40 minutes or so, because if you remember back to the first stint of this race, it was the second half of the stint where Grota really had the speed and was really able to close in. So I think, he's just got to not lose too much time in the first part and then hopefully gain some in the second part of his act. But it just depends how they're getting on with their pace in this second stint and whether tyres really are much of a problem around here, because you wouldn't think so, but maybe that is the reason. I don't know.
I think it's just time will tell sort of thing. I think we're all sort of just suspended in uncertainty, not really knowing as to what we're going to do, what the, quote-unquote better of this race, what's the best way to go about things. In the case of, we'll see what people do and who wins at the end of it all. Of course, we can make predictions and see relative what's happened over the course of the first part of this race, but beyond that, yeah, it definitely is an unknown. But while they are, 5 seconds separated on track, Sven Mackenberg, Christian Grot, both fighting it out for the lead of the race. Two, I guess, tyrants of the class. No one else really coming close. I mean, you've got Daniel Parvan and Alessandro Botti as well, who were up there, at the start of this race for Parvan not too long ago, but unfortunately have fallen back a little bit. So it has sort of gone the way of the German and the Norwegian to take the reins at the front of this, at the front of that pack and control it. But yeah, I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing how it grows and develops and changes, because I think it could go either way. Mackenberg is quick and obviously timed the first pit stop well, but that's not to say it'll go the same for the second one. Traffic gives, traffic takes. We've seen it time and time again where a 5-second gap through a big wave of traffic isn't a hell of a lot.
Tyrants of the class. Goodness me. What a way of putting it. Brutal. Well, either way, their rule, regardless of tyrannical or not, is continuing in that prototype category, as is in the GT3 category between Cody Nikola Latkovsky and Droboseko. But we are beginning to see those coming into the pit lane. You see there on the exit, that's Yuval Rosen, who was recently into the pit lane. Ruth Felipe then to Guibert into the pit lane, and this is an hour complete in the race, just ticking over, hour 24 left to go. This is about where we expect a majority of this GT3 contingent to come into the pit lane, which will mean towards the end of the race they will have to do a splash and dash of some description to take them across the line. And the obvious statement is you want to be in the pit lane for as little time as possible, and so extending at this point to make sure that stationary that stationary time in the pit lane is as little as possible. You have to put as little fuel in possible. Every little litre that you can save right now will pay dividends later on in the race, but will you lose too much time from saving that fuel? That is the gamble which you're always taking in races like this, Ewan.
Yeah, it is, and I think we mentioned earlier on that we would be surprised to see anybody try one stop here today in this race. Oh, Sven Mackenberg off the road at turn 1. Yeah, what has happened? Those tyre marks, though, it looked like he went on his own there, and there's no real cars around him either.
Yeah, there was absolutely no one nearby, and Sven Mackenberg from the race lead has had a shocker coming through turn 1 there, and I mean, Zach, obviously, surely it's solo. I mean, maybe there was lap traffic involved. We don't know. We won't know, unfortunately. But that's massive when it comes to drama in this race. And also, do you see that in the background as well? There was someone else, I think that might have been Villa Cravey, who's also been round at T1. Maybe there's virtual oil down, I don't know. That's not a thing, right?
Yeah, no, don't listen to those. I wish that, to be fair, that'd be quite cool. But anyway, yeah, no, it's surprising and, as you say, massive for Sven Mackenberg's race, because the tides have changed really, and now Christian Grotter is in control, 6.5 seconds clear of the German, and with the confidence boost, Sven Mackenberg is going to be carrying that mistake for the rest of this race, and is, for the remainder of the 1 hour and 22 minutes that we've got left, going to be playing catch up. That's huge, and it does not take much. I did not see that coming at all. I thought he was, fairly comfortable in his driving style, but obviously something's happened, and it's not the usual. It's not like he locked up the front and undersid off like we were maybe expecting with the prototypes. He looped it round and was facing the wrong way. That is strange, bizarre, and yeah, that is very, very unfortunate for Sven Mackenberg. But if it's all by himself, he's got no one to blame other than himself.
Yeah, but the realistic scenario is that Christian Grutter's taken over the race lead. The yellow flags come out in that third sector once again. I think it might be Mikael Lapanik who is dropping back. There is Marvin Mackenberg, as the two Mackenbergs that were leading Ewan now find themselves in second in category. One courtesy of mistake, the other courtesy of a lack of pit stop going the way of Rokas DeB right now. As Marvin's going to try and retake over the race lead.
It certainly is. I'm not really sure why Mr. B is going so long here. I guess to just shorten that final pit stop at the end of the day as much as he possibly can. But for the moment, it doesn't really make sense, as that's a very big drive-through penalty just come through the top of your screen there, Zach. Ilya Drovosikov is going to have a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane. That might well, I don't want to speak too early, but settle this race, because Connie Nicola Latkoski is surely going to have quite a lead after that.
Yeah, Zabdir is quick, but is he that quick? I mean, we're seeing now Mackenberg get his way past DeB, but of course Mackenberg has come into the pit lane, DeB has not, so that's not sort of the hype-up fight for the race lead that potentially we could hope for in the GTEs. But yeah, massive for the Swiss driver of Drovosekov, and as you say, could be the nail in the coffin. I don't see Nikola Latovsky, being caught or like that, the way that he was able to recover so quickly in the early portion of this race, and then overtake a train of cars that had been fighting tooth and nail for the majority of the race up until the point that the Nikola Latovsky had actually caught up. He was able to clear that train, something that no one else had managed to do in the span of 2 laps, and then sail off into the lead. He is one to watch, he's one to keep an eye out for, and is one that is, I don't think we're actually going to be watching him too much. The fact that he's going to be up into the distance, it's just unfortunate for Drovosekov, because he was the one that was going to bring the fight to him, but it happens to the best of us. And again, as we were saying a bit earlier on, Lewis, it's so easily done. You're coming off the banking, trying to break for the pit lane, and there's no real marker to go off. You just sort of have to eyeball the fact that you're braking from top speed down to the pit lane speed limiter in not too long of a time. It can very easily go wrong, and Drovosekov and a number of others have proved that, and now it's just a case of where Drovosekov can recover to.
Well, where is Drovosekov? You see him coming through the foreground of shots, and regardless, see that pit lane sequence has lost out an awful lot of time to our race leader in the GT3 category, 7.5 seconds. Regardless, thankfully the pit lane around here is not a particularly long one, so coming in to serve that that speeding in the pit lane penalty won't be particularly costly compared to other circuits, but it'll still certainly feel like it. 2 more drivers have come into the pit lane recently, by the way. Bertrand Barriere and Guillaume Jobard both into the pit lane, as well as Marcus Grünig. Pit lane quietens down though as we await for those to charge back in, and Rokas de B, curiously enough, has retaken over the race lead in the GTE category. Did something happen to Marvin Mackenberg on that lap, or is he just literally thinking, right, well, I've got 25 seconds to everyone, you're the only car around me, so I'm going to battle with you whether you like it or not, because to be honest, I'm bored.
Yeah, I don't really know why they're fighting either, really. Obviously, Rokas de B would like to go another 3 laps here, you'd imagine, and get to that 1 hour 12 to go. Oh my good lord, he's broken late there. Into the barrier at turn 1. You very rarely see that. The wall's so far away from turn 1 there, where you want to be. It's very rare to see anybody outside and into the wall there at turn 1, especially not a driver of the calibre of Rokas de B there, Zach, but he has found the tyres just a little bit. I wouldn't expect there to be any damage after that kind of brush, though.
Yeah, he probably got away with it. I'm assuming he did get away with it, and yeah, he's carrying on just fine. That's probably going to be to the disappointment of Marvin Mackenberg to have his little buddy to go around with and have a bit of a fight with. Yeah, well, that is unfortunate. I guess easily done. It's not the first time we've done one. Big victims, both going straight on and looping rounds through the first corner, but not quite to that extent. So it is a peculiar incident in that regard. But yeah, that is something that de B is just going to have to shake off and carry on with. Bit of a fight further down though between Cravey, Woodring and Demont, as well as Riedel as well. We're getting it's all kicked off really in the middle of the GTE classes. We've got now 4 cars fighting for the podium places, Lewis.
Yeah, they've certainly closed up, courtesy of potentially Riedel not pitting. I don't necessarily know as to that, whether he's been the bottleneck in all of this, but of course can fight these behind. De Monte comes through, and like you say, Villacravey after that spin, remember, the spin at the first corner at the same kind of time that Sven Mackenberg did it. De Monte gets to the inside with a big send coming in to the Le Mans chicane. De Monte sent it in there. Ooh, well, that could be very important because now Villacravey has got to work through the same one, but courtesy of the slow exit from Riedel, that is going to be a pretty easy switch, you'd have to say.
Well, yeah, but Cravey's found himself having to go the long way around the banking here. You might think that it's not really that much of a disadvantage, but it is a longer route around there, and you don't really get the benefit of coming down off the banking either. So it's going to be free wide. The real slingshot has been had there by Vutrix just in the background, around the outside of the 3 wide moment into turn 1, late on the brakes, and he is through into 4th place. Good opportunistic driving from the Swiss driver, and he is up to 4th. You'd expect Riedel to be in at the end of this lap. Well, maybe not the end of this lap, sorry, the end of the next one, where himself and Rokas de B have just made it on the 1 stop. If indeed they can go 1 more. I think they're going to need at least 1 more.
It's absolutely sensational from Florian Vutric to have gone through now. I say, just read it brilliantly. I mean, I say sensational. I mean, he literally just held the throttle pedal down and went slightly higher on the oval. But still, I mean, respect just, again, had the momentum, and rather than thinking about who do I bump draft, who do I follow, who do I get the slipstream off, just went, well, actually, I fancy just getting past both of you. I'm not going to waste any time with this. And boom, the Swiss driver goes up into 4th, what will become 3rd, and the final spot on the podium, at least for now, because we still have to wait to see what's going to happen with various members of this field, whether they are actually going to be able to do this race on a 1 stop. There are a few trying it, Rokas de B being one of them, Riedel being one of them, and then the car ahead of this in the GT3 category, Villering being one of them to try it as well. There's side-by-side in the background, but that is Tamino coming through as lap traffic. This could be the opportunity for Guibert, Enzo Guibert, to get through to the outside of the Le Mans chicane. He's going to try to get past this Callaway that's ahead of him, but still the gap's going to grow massively to Marius Sabdir ahead. But Vollering is able to hang on again. Long route around for Enzo Guibert. He's got to give it a go, but maybe Rui Felipe is going to try and pull a Vutric.
Yeah, I think he will do here. The Corvette very strong in a straight line, seemingly. The Ferrari not quite able to get alongside, but also having the long way around as well. The Audi of Felipe looks like he's just going to push here. I think he didn't have any choice anyway. Going 3 wide wasn't really an option there. He is looking for 3rd place now, though. down towards turn number 1, not going to be able to. Just going to preserve 4th place, I think. Lucas Vollering going to give it a go, but not going to find any luck, any joy around the outside line. Not a bad effort from him. He has made the one-stop work, because pitting at the end of the next lap, he should be fine to make it on one stop, which I am surprised about, but I don't think the winner of this race is going to be the driver making one-stop strategy in either GT or GT3.
Like, I love the bravery of trying it. There is always that kind of thing. But is it the wise call? No. I mean, look at the GTE category. Rokas to be, who I'd argue is a plenty fast enough driver to go after a podium on a regular day anyway. I mean, maybe he is going to gain from it. I don't really know, but theoretically, you've got to think about it like for like, right? So Marvin Mackenberg has 1 more stop left in this race. Rokas to be has 1 more stop left in this race, and so I mean, Rokas to be's not going to be winning this race. That's for sure. He's going to go around for 1 more, so 100% this is a one-stop strategy from the Flying Dutchman. Maybe he's got the pace to hang on to 2nd, because De Monte and Cravey are plenty far enough behind. But it's not going to be a race. Maybe then I guess maybe that wasn't the goal from it anyway.
Well, exactly, and there's a couple of ways you could look at it. Really, you could look at it like that, but I would argue that all 4 drivers that have decided, or 5 maybe if you count Marquez as well, although I think he did have to stop earlier. All 4 of them, were they going to win anyway? Like, I don't think so, really. So, no disrespect to them. Of course, Rokas to be very good driver, by the way, as you mentioned, but the strength of Marvin Mackenberg there is just too much in the GTEs, I think, and it was worth a go for Rokas to be, as it was in the GT3 category for the likes of Lucas Vollering, because he is still in 5th place. You've got to remember that everybody has 1 stop remaining at this stage in the race now, and so these positions are real. Rokas to be and the likes of Vollering and so on will have a longer final stop, of course, and that's all positive. But positive for the guys that are doing the 2-stop, of course. But I think it is the right call here, to be honest, to just gamble on making a 1-stop, because they weren't going to win anyway here, Zach. I don't know what you think, but we always like a little bit of 1-stop bravery. I certainly do.
Something different, I guess. You're being the anomaly. You're trying something different, and you're going out there. I mean, fair play to them, because as you say, it's sort of a case of we're losing 8th, 9th, 11th, 12th place, whatever it is, by doing it. Like, great. It's not like we're gambling the race lead by going on to a 1-stop. It's like, if it doesn't work, great. Now we know not to try it again. If it doesn't work, then oh well. I guess it wouldn't become much worse anyway if we just done the normal strategy. So just going out there, trying a 1-stop, and they might be able to gain a couple of places from it, who knows? And if they do it well, the thing is not only trying to do it, but also executing it well is another thing entirely. You've got to have that patience about you, not become too desperate and not get too disheartened that people around you are flying past and using up a lot more of their engine capacity than you are, because at least for me, when you try a conservative strategy, it's easy just to abandon ship and say, no, I want to stay with the pack, I want to use more of my fuel, and then by that point you've sort of screwed yourself over, in the sense that you're off target for your 1-stop strategy and you've lost too much time to come back and do stop. So you just put yourself in an awkward predicament. So I mean, yeah, it's a case of making sure you hit your marks and you hit your fuel targets as well. Yeah, because especially around Daytona, as we said, time and time again, Lewis, it's easier said than done to be saving fuel.
Oh yeah, I do remember doing my fair few championships in GT3s where we had to do an hour and a half race. We worked out the fastest way to do the hour and a half race was actually to not pit at all. This was on half altitude a long time ago, back in 2015, and when you get into that fuel saving mindset, it is incredibly difficult. You're literally focused on every tiny little bit, and you are talking about what can save you 0.1 of a litre, which by the way is actually a significant margin to save. But if there's anything like that you can save, it makes an enormous difference. It's a very hard mindset to get into and to get out of, and to react to in various races. You're better off sticking to what you've practiced, and these drivers will have practiced saving an awful lot of fuel that are doing it, as we can see Guibert going around. Rokas to be, by the way, still yet to come into the pit lane. Maybe he's trying to do the whole race on 1 tank of fuel, I don't know. He's 9 seconds off of the race leader, Marvin Mackenberg. That's obviously not what he is trying to do. But there he is. Rocus de B continues out on the race circuit almost an hour and 15 minutes into his first stint over this race. 12 seconds clear of De Monte, who's 1.6 clear of McGlade and Vitrick behind. Rydell also in the same boat, staying out. Same with Vullering and Lapanek. Clearly they've saved enough fuel. There must be plenty of room in this tank, because if you were saving fuel, surely you wouldn't try and save this much, if you know what I mean. Like, you would save to get to halfway through the race, and or slightly past, and then you would pit, and then copy and paste. I don't understand why you would try and save fuel to then go 5, 6, 7 minutes past that.
Yeah, I don't know why Rocus de B is continuing or why he's got the fuel to continue either, but let's not forget earlier on in the race what was going on between himself and Villecravy as well. De B was behind Cravey for a long time in P2. We were getting excited for a battle, and it never came. Rocus de B was just sat there, and I wonder how much fuel he was actually able to save as a result of that, because clearly he's able to go a very long way here. We're now coming up to 5 minutes past the mark where you'd expect him to be in, 3 laps longer maybe than where you'd expect him to be in, and he's still losing time as well to those around him, so he must still be saving fuel or something. Oh, well, I guess older tyres as well is not helping him, but he's going to continue on again here. Zach, I agree with Lewis. It's very, very bizarre that he would save this amount of fuel to carry on quite like this, unless he really intends on going all out in the final part of this race, but I don't get why you would do that.
I think it's now at a point where he's losing more than he could potentially gain by being this extreme in saving fuel. It's not like he can, have comfortable tank to the end and then be able to just go flat out and gain all that time back, because to some degree he is still going to have to save some fuel for his second stint in this race. So I think it's an interesting one for sure, as you both say. A peculiar one because he really is out there. I mean, you've got Riedel, who still is yet to come into the pit lane as well, but isn't sort of as spotlight in this race as Rocus de B has been. But yeah, it's weird, because surely at this point he's, as I say, he's just losing more than he can gain, and that's certainly not going to help with Prototype starting down his inside and losing himself a little bit of time. Probably at the worst point of the circuit as well is in towards turn 6, where that's where you've really got to get a good exit through the oval. So yeah, just a lot of things attributed to the fact that De B is not actually gaining that much time relative to those around him.
I think that was Marcus Grunning, by the way, coming through. I was almost tempted to say it was Alessandro Botti, but I'm not sure. I think with the damage on the front end of that car, it does make a little bit more sense that it would be Marcus Grunning, who's a little bit further down the order. He's had a couple more issues today as the yellow flag once again comes out. I'm not 100% sure as to who that is for in the third and final sector. There is Alessandro Botti with a lot of damage on the front end, so maybe it was him. That is very broken. Oh, very broken.
Yeah, very broken, and he's going to be down to 5th at least here after this, because Daniel Parvin is not too far behind, and Bottas is going to be extremely disappointed about that, because the two of them, if you remember, in the early portion of this race had a real big battle where the two came to blows multiple times, and Bottas is going to have to let Parvin through with gritted teeth, you would imagine, with such damage on his car. It's quite remarkable damage, actually. I don't know what he's found, whether it's another car or a wall there, Zach, but he can barely keep that car under control. And of course he's going to have to pit too early to make this a 2-stop race as well. It's going to have to be 3 stops now for the Italian.
Yeah, it's just all unravelled from at a moment's notice. He had a pretty good initial start to this race, then it fell apart a bit, then he's now trying to get back at it, and as soon as he sees it on the up, it's then all come crumbling back down to square one for Alessandro Botti, and really has sort of spelt an end to what could have been a decent recovery, maybe a fight for the podium versus Howe or those around him at least P4, but other than that it's not been great, and it's going to be a case of, I think, either putting in, cutting his losses and DNFing, or just trading around at the back for quite some time. Jovasekov, though, talking of comebacks, drive through for speeding in the pit lane a little bit earlier on, now in P10, trying to make it P9 to the inside of Berka into turn 1. Fairly easy affair. Now he's eyeing up D'Amico for P8. What are we seeing from Jovasekov in terms of a comeback drive, Lewis? Is it on for him to get anywhere really inside this race? A top 5 maybe?
Potentially. It certainly is on the cards. By the way, I just want to very quickly say, I think I might have worked out what's happened to Rokas to be, to Rydell, to Vullering, and to Lapinick. And I do apologise if anyone's been saying it in the YouTube chat and whatnot. And if you are, hello, welcome, obviously. Thank you for watching the broadcast and whatnot. Obviously, these we're idiots in the corner, just to clarify.
I know what you're going to say now.
Yeah, I think you are. Obviously, the green marker is those that have come into the pit lane within the pit window sequence, right? Great. The pit lane sequence didn't open immediately. It's not been open for the entirety of the race. It's open for a certain bit inside, so you've got to make a pit stop, I think, within the middle hour or whatever it is, whatever it is. I think that Rokas to be Rydell, Vullering, and Lapinick and Marquez have all been in the pit lane within the first sort of like half hour of the race. They've done their short stint early, and so they're now on an hour-long stint, and they will be pitting around, well, 5-10 minutes time for the final hour-long stint. I think they've already done their short stop. It's just that we haven't seen it being checked off, and we like to see pretty colours and then go, ooh, yes or no. But again, we're idiots. We do apologise. I think that's what's happened.
Well, I'm going to put a different suggestion forward.
Ooh.
Because it says that we have a mandatory pit stop here today. Obviously, that's what the green and red stuff is about on the left-hand side of the screen, in case you're wondering. I think it's because Rokas to be and Rydell and following Lapinick, I think it's because they haven't taken tyres. And that's why they're falling through the field, because Mackenberg, he is a lot quicker than to be, but everybody's catching Rokas to be at the moment, and that's odd. So I think it is no tyres taken by those four, and they're all losing time. So maybe that's why. I can't believe we didn't pick that up earlier.
Either way, we're idiots.
Yeah, we are a little bit.
Anyway, to Zach Sweeney.
People have been screaming at TV.
Yeah, no, they're on a one-stop. That's got to be it, right? Surely.
Look, let's be honest, we don't know everything in the commentary booth, and we don't have anything that tells us everything, unfortunately. So, we're only going off of what we can see, and, one of us wears glasses and the other one's colourblind, so it's up to you to really help us out there. Alas, we're not in a good boat.
Is that green or red?
Oh, don't you start me. Do you know what? Do you know when you, call cars by their colour? Right, yeah. I can't do that. I can't say it with confidence, because I'll see a purple or blue car and be like, and the purple car goes to the inside, and then be scared I'm going to get ripped apart by YouTube for saying that's a blue car, what are you talking about? So I can't.
Get Ferrari red, right? Yeah,
then that's fine. That is red. Is it a green McLaren and a green Audi as well? I don't know, mate. Honestly.
Oh, please don't tell me you think that's a green McLaren.
That's a colour argument more than a colour blind argument, I think.
There's it's definitely black and gold, and it is definitely sat second in this train, and third in the GT3 race as Guibert makes his way back through ahead of Zabdir and Felipe. We're just going to have massive arguments in the booth. But it is definitely black and gold, rather a charcoal grey and gold car. I know because Dennis Lindstrom.
Oh right, well there we are. But yeah, we could have these arguments about colours all day long, to be honest, about who and where and whatever. As that was a big dive through one of the Daytona prototypes, going to be able to not make contact with anybody, thankfully, but it split apart this group just a little bit for the moment. As Alessandro Botti, by the way, retires from this race, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, after. Well, it's understandable that the Italian's done that. I think it was a natural cause of action, a natural consequence to what happened, because there's no way you're going to be able to come in, repair the damage, go back out, and then recover. It's long gone. More understandable than Kilman a little bit earlier on with one drive-through for speeding, but I mean, still both cases are understandable. It's a shame that we've lost them from the race, because both of them seem to, be doing quite well. Particularly Botti seemed to be quite quick and could have done quite well. But yeah, that's racing. That's what happens. That's how the cookie crumbles. And a little bit unfortunate for those guys involved. But hey, we're looking forward to seeing how the rest of the race plans out and that fight between Brott and Mackenberg.
We certainly are. Obviously, there is 1 hour left to go in this race. We'll see if Zabdir is able to get past Enzo Guibert here. And we do reckon the pole is looking pretty fast at the moment, but definitely not fast enough to close the 20-second gap up to Cody Nikola-Latkovsky. Zabdir to the outside, trying to take over second position. Enzo Guibert with the inside run, side by side. A bit of a brush, a bit of contact between the two of them. It is absolutely superb, but Zabdir works his way up into second position. Meanwhile, Enzo Guibert's trying to get back to the inside. Absolutely crazy between these two as they race once again up towards the kink. And I've got to say, Ewan, they're putting on a bit of a show.
Oh. Yeah, they are. Fantastic racing side by side. Guibert on the inside line again. And he's going to have it now. And through the West Horseshoe, there it is. Felipe once again being the calmest head of the three. Just staying behind. Guibert through though. This very much means, in my opinion, that these three are resigning themselves to second place. They know that they can't catch Cody Nicola Latkowski in this race now. I wouldn't expect them to. But they are going to have a fantastic fight between themselves while they're doing it, Lewis.
Yeah, well, hopefully we're going to see these battle a lot more, but hopefully they can hang on for about another 60 seconds. As again, we've got 58 minutes left to go. We are just going to step aside, but it is going to go side by side, so you don't miss any of this crazy action. It's been a fantastic race thus far. 1.5 hours nearly down, just one left to go. Well, thank you to our sponsors, and thank you to these three for not switching over in all of that ad break as well. They've stayed nicely in line, and now they can go ahead and battle. 56 minutes and 50 seconds left to go with the Daytona 2.4H. It's been a frantic race thus far. We've seen plenty of drama. Final pit stops on the horizon. In the company of myself, Liz McGlade, Ewan O'Leary and Zach Sweeney taking through the final hour of this racing. And like we say, we've been on the edge of our seat for quite a lot of it, none less so than this battle here. A three-way fight for second in the GT3 category. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, fantastic racing. Thankfully they did calm down a little bit for us to watch that and then get back into it. Less than an hour to go now. And as I mentioned just before the break, I think these guys are going to fight it out between second or for second between themselves, I should say. Any hopes of catching the race leader at this stage are pretty much gone. But it looks like it's going to be a good fight here, Zach. I mean, they're very evenly matched as the race leader in GT3 makes their final pit stop of the day.
Yeah, that is Cody Nicola Latkowski, who only praises really you can say for him so far in this race. It's been phenomenal, and now at 55 minutes then to see them to the end of the race in fairly, comfortable fashion. I mean, touch wood, it's looking good. Let's put it that way. But definitely a good fight for second to turn into, well, a provisional lead of the race as Guibert leads now from Zabdir and Philippe just a couple of turns back from them while these guys wait for their pit stops. Talking of pit stops though, these guys have also got to come in at some point as we see some of the prototypes, one of the prototypes work their way past these guys. These guys have got to come in, and that decision making could play a factor in who was wearing this train. While they're fighting tooth and nail on the circuit, it could come down to who pits first, who pits last to decide the track position in this fight for second.
Yeah, I think that is going to play its part, as we can see Cody Nicola Latkowski coming through the pit lane, Vollering and Lapinic also in. Vollering almost driving into the into the pit lane with Latkowski. You're absolutely right. I think with who pits when in this group is the most important thing. Getting out to clean air, getting away from the group. Because the thing is as a three, this group will all do the same lap times, pretty much, right? Because it is quite hard to not only pass and then get away from the group. Now that can mean the group will actually lap faster as a group. Slipstream and the way they switch and all that kind of stuff and blah blah blah. There are certain ways that the group itself can lap faster than one as a solo. I don't think that's necessarily the case here. But it does mean that if you pit earlier or later, depending on how the other group pits, it is enormously hard to calculate what is the right and wrong strategy. You've just got to hope that your stationary time in the box, the bare minimum, is less than the other people you're battling with. One way to really shorten your pit stop, though, is to not take tyres. wonder if someone else will be taking those kind of risks like what we potentially have seen, although don't know an absolute confirmation of. We'll have to wait and see, won't we?
Yeah, and I think the timing of pit stops is kind of less obvious than what we saw during the Daytona prototypes and their first stops of the day. And by the way, they're not far away from their final pit stops either at this stage. Still quite a few minutes to go for them, but it won't be long. Yeah, I mean, timing of the pit stop's going to be important, but then again, a lot of this circuit now is covered by cars. You know, it's going to be Daytona prototypes and GTEs ready to overtake these guys almost wherever they are on the circuit. So I feel like the timing is a little bit less important than it was for the first round of stops, especially for the Daytona prototypes as well, where we saw you know, a real loss of time and a gain of time by still. We saw a real loss of time by Grunt, who was, you know, a couple of seconds behind Mackenberg before and turned out about 5 seconds behind. So I don't think it's quite going to be like that. It's just going to be a little bit of luck here, really, Zach. That's the thing with multi-class traffic and pitting and whatever. Finding yourself in traffic, you don't know where the cars are going to be at this point because they're all so spread out.
As much as we don't like saying it, sometimes it does come down to an element of luck, particularly as we say with traffic, timing, when you get caught and slash when you catch, if you are the lapper as opposed to the lapped car in that situation. But yeah, for the prototypes, they're going to be hoping that they catch the GTs around the oval so they can just not lose too much time, go to the high line, get around and tuck back in. Same for the GTs, they're going to be hoping that they get caught during the oval so that they don't get sent to the inside and things like that. All those little things add up here and there, particularly if you're a prototype and you hit a big wave of GT traffic. It can play a massive factor. But at the moment, Zabdir and Philippe not really around much in the terms of traffic. They've got a bit of space to themselves, at least for this run in towards turn 1. Are we going to see the Portuguese driver go for a move in towards turn 1? Not quite close enough, not too interested really in getting past Zabdir, and between the pair of them, they've allowed Guibert to get away to the extent of about a second over the last couple of moments. Could Philippe be saving a bit of fuel? I mean, if he saves just a couple of litres, that could amount to a couple of tenths, which is really all he needs to, you know, get ahead of Zabdir and get closer to Guibert.
Yeah, I think it would be very important, like you say, to say whatever you can here, because if you can't pass, you know, like I say, in this scenario, what happens when they do pass? It makes no real difference. It's just about the, you're not going to be able to pull away. So try and save as much fuel as you can. Villacravy, on the other hand, is in a slightly different boat. It needs to get through, fancies a move to get past the Rokas to be the car ahead that is yet to stop. Or yet to stop, at least for this pit stop. Question marks on the way to that one. As you can see, Ruben Marquez on the pit lane exit. Regardless, Rokas to be on much older tyres. We can confirm that one to you for the Villacravy, who was sat there behind trying to fancy a way past. It counts to how it is with Rui Felipe against Zabdir, where Rui Felipe is going to run the same pace as Zabdir, whether he's ahead or behind. Villacravy will be running much faster than Rokas to be, and so will be desperate to try and make a pass. Coming down to the West Horseshoe right now, and the Finn not able to find a way past, still remains 3 tenths behind. This is potentially the part where there might be a substantial difference. The drive off of this corner, the grip should be advantageous towards the Porsche behind, rather than the Porsche ahead.
I think Cravey would have gone through into turn 1 there if that Daytona prototype wasn't there. I just don't think he really wanted to force that free wide with himself in the middle. You can see now though the draft is really helping him. Cravey doesn't know whether to go outside or inside. He's eventually choosing outside, but it's very narrow down here. He's not going to be able to make it around the outside of the bus stop. Oh, Rokas to be though goes deep on the brakes and goes over the corner. He's going to lose second place for sure as a result of that, and maybe even Zach is going to be caught up for third as well with those two positions. Fourth and fifth, not too far behind him.
Yeah, I mean, he did the right thing, just baiting to the runoff area, slowing down a little bit, but I'm sure the RaceRoom sort of in-game AI stewards not going to be too happy with that one. He doesn't seem to be serving a slowdown or anything like that, so he might have just gotten away with it. But yeah, definitely not ideal for the Dutchman. Easy sort of affair for Cravey though, just to go to the outside and then, you know, have it handed to him. And still De Bie is, you know, going in too deep for turn 1. I don't think those tyres are particularly in the best of condition, but yeah, I think focused too much on, you know, looking at his mirrors, looking as to where the fin of Cravey was, and instead didn't focus too hard on his braking point. A bit of a mistake coming at the International Horseshoe. Could see Rudrick to have a bit of a look and get himself up onto the podium. So what seemed to be running quite well for to be in second place. Yes, losing time. It's now really unravelled, and now I think he really is struggling. You can visually see how much he's struggling to, rear end and front end.
I'd rather visually see than audibly see, so you're absolutely right. Rokas to be under a lot of pressure from Vizric and Demonte behind. White Porsche versus white Porsche versus white Porsche. That is not a colourblind test, it is just the truth. They are all driving around in very similar liveries, and Rokas to be, I agree with you, is certainly struggling here. Just kept up with Marvin McIntyre quite well actually earlier on. That's a slight mistake down into the first corner that we saw, but alas, as the stint goes on, the problems get bigger and bigger and bigger, and I'd be screaming to Rokas to be to come in ASAP to at least get off of these tyres, get onto some brand new tyres, focus on the final 50 minutes of the race, dragging yourself back into the mix somewhere, potentially for a podium, potentially something else, maybe even if it's just a top 5, whatever. But right now, you can see that this pain is only going to get worse and worse and worse. It's Roy Vitrick is going to drag himself into this, with Slipstream being picked up by Demonte, who we're on board with. To the outside they'll go, heading onto the tri-oval up towards turn 1, looking to the inside there as Demonte's going to switch it back to the inside of the Swiss driver. There's contact between the two. See ya. They both go each different ways. Demonte and Vitrick sent around after contact between the two. Their eyes were too focused on the Dutchman ahead, it seems.
I think Demonte hit the inside wall of the pit lane as well there. I'm not sure, because we haven't seen whether he has actually got damage just yet, but I'm fairly sure, given the way that his car was positioned and the way that he was going, that was heading straight for the dividing wall there, and if so, then it's going to be fairly hefty damage to that Porsche. But it did seem that they were just focusing on each other. Rokas to be a little bit as well, made a little bit of contact, and to be fair, Zach, it wasn't a big bit of contact, but it had really big consequences. I'm not really sure who to pin the blame on, to be honest.
Sometimes it doesn't take much to spark something as big as that. You're going into turn 1 at such speeds, and you're demanding a lot of the car. It's on its absolute limit. So yeah, as we say, it only takes a small bit of contact, a slight tap to send cars off, and that's exactly what we saw there. Nothing, nothing malicious, nothing, intentional or anything like that. Just a small mistake on a couple of people's part that unfortunately had that big knock-on effect, that big consequence that has now seen them knocked down a couple of pegs in the running order. But again, that's happened. It's a woe that's happened to a number of people. But yeah, it's just what happens. Sometimes it's racing. Things happen. You make mistakes, and at this point, the pressure's on. You've got loads of cars around you, and it is very, very easy to get overwhelmed when you're in that situation. And when you get overwhelmed, you sort of lack that better judgment, and those mistakes do start to creep in.
Yeah, certainly so. Like I say, someone say. Yeah, that is the part of racing. You're all on track at the same time. That's the beauty of it sometimes. It's the scary part of it in real life, and thankfully in the sim we don't typically have those problems. Rokas to be, though, does come into the pit lane. Same with Vitrick, so there is the pit lane opportunity for those to come down. Obviously, I'm sure Vitrick's tyres probably aren't in the best scenario. I'm sure Demonte is probably in the same boat of wanting to come into the pit lane, but as is Christian Grutter coming to the pit lane from the race lead in the prototype category. So it was a busy time in pit lane as expected. The final 45 minutes left to go in this race. This is the time where we think most drivers will try and get their final stops out of the way.
It is, so we've already seen Sven Mackenberg into the pit lane, by the way. So this is the race right here overall between Crotcher and Mackenberg. We're trying to avenge that second place, of course, that he had here 1 year ago, with hopefully a first place this time around. But he's in a big battle right now with the Norwegian, and we'll see where he comes out in relation to Mackenberg now. I presume he'll be rolling already. Mackenberg will be making his way around to one area right now. I think Mackenberg's going to get there though, and he is. The net well, no, not quite. He's not quite there yet. That's passing Parvin. I think he's going to be fairly close. The gap's seemingly going to stay fairly similar here, Zach. About 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds. There's Sven Mackenberg. There's the gap for the race. It's going to be fingernail time for the final 45 minutes.
Yeah, I think Sven Mackenberg, it's times like this where you look back in hindsight, and Mackenberg's going to be like, if I didn't spin earlier, I'd be comfortably in the lead. I'd be ahead of him. But he's worked hard, he's put the lap times in, not much in it at all. You can see their best lap times, a 1:47.74 for Mackenberg, a 1:48.82 for Grott. Only a 10th difference in terms of their pace. in that last lap too, not really separated by much at all. But it's going to take something from Sven Mackenberg. He's got to dig deep in the final 44 minutes of this race because, yeah, as Ewan said, he's carrying that second place, missed out by such a thin margin last year. He doesn't want to repeat it this year. He's going to want to close that gap. He's going to want to get into the lead of the race, and he's not got long to do it. Time isn't on his side, but at least now he's not got pit strategy to worry about. Everything's done and dusted. It's a sprint to the finish, focus on the driving, and catch back up onto the back of that Norwegian.
Yeah, he seems to have been given a bit of a lifeline, potentially as Sven Mackenberg, but will it be too much? Again, we remind you back to the first time earlier on in this race when Sven Mackenberg was leading and he had that odd spin. We didn't see it on the broadcast, but he certainly had one, and that was what gave Grotte the lead. So wait for Hout to come into the pit then, or return its way to Grotte. It does seem as though we're going to have a final 43-minute fisticuffs between the Norwegian and the German, at least in the prototype category. Here's the battle though for second place in the GT3 category, which now becomes the race lead as Enzo Guibert comes into the pit lane. Zabde and Felipe very tight on the circuit, and once again Zabde's going to hang on to what is the race lead right now, but what probably won't be after the pit stop, because 7th place Cody Nikola Latkovsky really was looking like the favourite earlier on. I'd suggest it'll probably end up being that again.
Yeah, definitely won't be the race lead, I would imagine, unless they do something really crazy. Latkovsky's not even that far behind them, to be honest, right now. So yeah, we'll see what happens between them, but I do think that Enzo Guibert might just have been able to get away enough there to be able to actually confirm himself with second, and maybe leave these two fighting over third here. Zachary, it's very difficult to tell quite what's going to happen between them all when there's still a pit stop to make. That can change things so quickly.
We've seen it. You know, you go into one lap and then you do everything the same, then you go into the next lap and it can flip completely on its head and the race can be thrown away in a split second. All it takes is braking a little bit too late, getting on the power a little bit too early, then you've locked up, or you've spun the rear wheels and you've gone round, or you're surrounded by other cars and you've made that mistake, you've made a bit of contact. It only takes one sort of kink in the cogs of something going wrong to spark a chain reaction that sees your race unfold just like that. So it's really not over until the checkered flag. We saw it with Sven Mackenberg earlier on with his spin at turn 1, and has since been on the climb trying to recover. It can happen to anyone, and the thing about racing is, yes, incidents do happen, but they are very much indiscriminate and they will go after anyone, no matter how bad of a race you've got, no matter how good of a race you've had. It doesn't care. It will come to bite you and take you as its victim, no matter what. So you've really got to be on the lookout. You've really got to hit your mark, drive as consistently as possible, and try and limit those mistakes, because yeah, it still is anyone's game. But you know, it's not trying to push any false narratives, and particularly in the GT3 class, it seems that Nikola Latkovsky he's got his wits about him. He's been able to negotiate this race with a nice prowess. But again, maybe that could lead into his own demise. Maybe he could start getting complacent out in front.
Well, you can see there at the bottom of your screen, I've just double checked it, it was certainly the case. The last lap time for Sven Mackenberg was the fastest lap, not only of himself, but of the race itself, bringing it down further 0.3 of a second on the previous lap, down to 1.5. Sven Mackenberg is absolutely flying to close down on Christian Grotte. This is going to be a barnstorming fight for sure. But you've got to remember, this is the whole thing with sport, isn't it, Ian, where you have this kind of scenario, more, you know, in racing, where you kind of sit here and be like, probably, let's say, an hour ago, right? Sven Mackenberg might have sat there after, you know, straight after a spin, might have sat there and been like, look, if I can just get second out of here and, you know, walk away with the second, I'll be okay with that. Not happy, but okay with that. Whereas now he's closing in on Christian Grotte. The only thing he'll be okay with is a race victory. How that will change over the next 40 minutes, we do not know. But that's the thing, is that your mentality will switch so much in the world of racing that you're only as good as your last result, and in this sense, you're only as good as the battle that you're actually doing right now. And that relief comes in, whether you can win in a certain battle, whether it is over first and second, whether it is over 6th and 7th, or somewhere back down to get inside the top 10, it doesn't matter. the fight's the fight. You have that elation come through. Once again, by the way, it was 3/10 closed down by McGlade on the previous lap time. It was a 41.2 for Grotta, it was a 40.8 for Sven McGlade, as these two continue to fight at the head of GT3.
Yeah, expectations do certainly change, but I think even after that spin that Mackenberg would have been, still hoping for the race win, because he had, a taste of it maybe, as Luca De Monte goes around at turn number 1. Florian Vutrovic goes through. At least you've been together before, and they're back together once again here, Zach. Not sure what happened to De Monte, but he was battling with Rokas to be. I do wonder whether there was maybe contact.
Potentially so. Ooh, there's how having a bit of an off catching out actually is that's Zabdir and Philippe running their way through. Fortunately, no massive changes, and unfortunately a drive through for speeding in the pit lane for Grunig, and that's not the first, I'm sure. Well, I mean, it probably will be the last. Not many people have actually got pit stops to make, but on the live track action, this is the fight for what is the provisional race lead between Zabdir and Philippe. No moves made though for Philippe on this particular occasion, but yeah, well, a couple of mistakes creeping in the last couple of moments for the likes of Lutrick and those in pretty decent positions. Demont allowing Rutrick to close that gap with a bit of a mistake. Then of course Howard with that spin sparking potentially a battle here. It really has been a race of attrition, and into the pit lane actually comes the Audi of Philippe. The time spent behind the McLaren of Zabdir could really, come into his own after this pit stop sequence. The final one of the race. After that, 37 minutes to the finish, Lewis. Yeah,
it is arguably the most important part of the race, is making sure that pit window, that pit sequence is done correctly. And if there was a time not to get a speeding in the pit lane penalty, it is now. We've seen, 3-4 of them today, which is, to be fair, a bit lower than I expected. I was expecting to see a few more throughout the afternoon's running. Do not get them now. Once you've got through that final time down to pit lane, that's when you have your final breather, because when it comes to you going after a decent result in a race, the pit lane is the most dangerous part. Whoa, my goodness me. That was terrifying. Drovasekov going up, trying to allow the Porsche behind. Not sure which one it was. It might have been Ludo De Monte, might have been Jonas Riedel, or potentially Mike Pasemko. Certainly was one of those GTEs that were coming through, and that is the clear example, Ewan, as to why as a GT3 you'll get told by those in the higher category, don't try and let us through, don't try and get offline, stick to what you're doing, just be predictable.
Yeah, don't move, please, because that's what can happen, very nearly an incident. And to be honest, I'm surprised from Ilya Drovasikov. That's not a thing you'd expect to see from him. Very strong driver, of course, who won the Spa 2.4 hour on RaceRoom last year in 2022 by quite a little bit of a distance as well ahead of Lapkowski, so he knows what he's doing, like Drovasikov. I know that wasn't a multi-class race, but even so, it's a bizarre one to see him do that, as we see Rui Felipe speed in the pit lane, and that will be the end of the battle for second here, Zach, unless Zabdir and Guibert start to fight between them. Then we might get a fight, but Felipe is not going to be involved.
Well, I was wrong. It wasn't the last when Grunig had that spinning in the pit lane moment. Rui Felipe, unfortunately, has fallen victim to it, and, well, easily done. And those cheering from in the YouTube chat very quickly are going to have their smiles wiped off their faces with that one. Easy mistake to make, but a drastic one at that. And now Felipe is really out of contention, unless, Guibert and Zabdir make similar mistakes, which, yeah, it could happen. It's just very unlikely, and they're going to take a lot of caution going into the pit lane this time by. But yeah, Felipe it's unfortunate, because even in the early part of this race we saw how prominent that Audi was going to be in some of the lead battles, but this far in, with just over half an hour left to go, it's heartbreaking really for him to be at that final hurdle, really the final milestone of the race before the before the checkered flag, that final pit stop. That's that one more thing you have to overcome. Then it's just a straight sprint to the finish, and at that final hurdle, unfortunately, Felipe has tripped over and ruined his chances of a top position, probably maybe even outside the top 5 after his strike. But that really is a shame.
Well, I do believe we've got another retirement to add to the list because Grunig is out of this race. Meanwhile, the battle for the race lead is on. Christian Grutter versus Sven Mackenberg at the moment. He got there and then went straight on. So potentially getting inside his own head. A touch there was Sven Mackenberg. Saw his opportunity, went for it and failed to properly take full advantage. And there again, another big slide. He is absolutely destroying these tyres. I mean, he's done quite a good job to have closed up, but potentially pushing it a little bit too far.
Yeah, maybe as well. Certainly into the West Horseshoe on that occasion. But yeah, he does need to be a little bit careful of that as Alejandro Tomeno gets a drive through as well. He's running second right now. He's come out second in GTE. Clearly a bit of strategy going on there, but it's not worked out well. He's going to drop down, way down as a result of that. Maybe even to 9th place. That's how close it is in the midfield of the GTE standings right now. Yeah, this battle for the race win very much on right now, Zach. And Sven Mackenberg has been here before. I don't know if you remember his battle with Michael Kasperink at the end of the race last year, but there was a big moment between the two of them. It was about 15 minutes before the end of the race. There was contact between them. One of them was at fault, can't remember who it was, but one of the two was at fault and waited for the other down at turn number 1. There was definitely an incident in that one, and it was a very dramatic ending. It's it kind of getting deja vu a little bit.
Yeah, it's tense, particularly with maybe Sven Mackenberg feeling a little bit desperate to reclaim the top of the timing sheets, really, to get himself back into the race lead. Might see him, lack better judgment. Bit deep though goes Tomeno. Of course, he has got that drive through and taking a bit of a trip over the grass and a bit of a sideways moment off the exit of the Mont chicane allows Cravey through and demotes Tomeno into 3rd place. But in that fight for the lead, yeah, it was a big slide. I don't actually remember who it was, whether it was Mackenberg or Kasperink that just went sideways for the entirety of turn 1, but it was one of them. And all I can say to that was just fair play, because to be able to hold that was impressive. But yeah, it really is. We're in that closing moments, and it's a fight for the overall win and the class win in the prototypes at the top of the 3 classes. So it's on. The pressure is on for both of them. Grott has been in control for a good half of this race, pretty much since Sven Mackenberg made that mistake. Actually, no, probably not a good half of it, but a good portion of this race for the Norwegian. He's had the physical control leading the way, but also the psychological control, in the sense that he's not made those mistakes, whereas Sven Mackenberg has, and it's been on him to reclose that gap. And he's been cruising, saving his tyres. Mackenberg has been forced to push. So yeah, the German really has to cool down a little bit, make sure he analyses each and every move that he goes for with full confidence, because he can't just go in guns a-blazing, sending moves left, right and centre, because all that's going to end with is either him in the wall or both of them in the wall.
Yeah, there was, like I say, a couple of poor lap times coming in from Sven Mackenberg, finding his feet a little bit there though, going back into the 1 minute 40s, absolutely super on speed there, with a 40.581, just a few hundredths off of the fastest lap of this race set by Sven Mackenberg. Christian Grosser only doing a 40.9. Again, this fight is absolutely on. Some lap traffic just ahead. That one will be Linus Grieser. He'll be the one who's directly ahead, of course, 4th in class. That's the little bit of lap time they've got to deal with. And now it might be Christian Grote making the mistakes as we head back down into the GT3 category and see what was going on in there. The battle between Yuval Rosen and Daniel Berker, but the battle for the race lead overall, with 30 minutes left to go, is just about heating up the Norwegian of Christian Grote, who took the race lead courtesy of a mistake from Sven Mackenberg about, well, not quite 2 hours ago, about an hour and a half ago. Probably slightly less than that even. That was what allowed Christian Grote to take the lead by 5 seconds. Well, after the second round of pit stops, that gap has come down, and Sven Mackenberg's now going to go for it. He looks to the inside coming down to the Le Mans chicane. Doesn't manage to make anything stick, but was certainly giving him a look. The Norwegian slightly offline, and now it might be the German's attempt coming down to the first corner, Ewan.
Yeah, surely he's going to be able to have a chance now, but once again it could be that point of just being slightly too close. Mackenberg wise to that, pulls out wide and will swing off of the banking now, almost NASCAR style, use the banking and maybe get a bit of speed now with the slipstream as well. Grote going to hold the inside line, side by side over the line, but Mackenberg doesn't seem to have quite the straight line speed that the Norwegian does, not at least on that lap, Zach. wasn't able to go through it, and when he pulled out there, just seemed to hit a brick wall of air, and well, couldn't really go anywhere with it.
Exactly, as soon as he pulled to the right-hand side, he just was hit, as you say, that brick wall of air, waft of air, and really held him back. He couldn't properly use the slingshot. Grotta, with the, I guess, the straight line speed advantage, is going to be helping him, and yeah, it's definitely playing to his aid, because yeah, as soon as Mackenberg calls out to go for the move, he just hasn't got the legs versus Grotta. So it's going to be a case of maybe staying in the slipstream just a little bit longer, pulling out a little bit later, or just a case of being that little bit braver on the brakes. But yeah, Sven Mackenberg definitely has got a tough task ahead of him to get past Christian Grotta for of this race, because it's going to be hard fought. It's not just a case of getting close enough, it's also, Christian Grotta defending the inside, sticking his nose around the outside, all these different things. The Norwegian's going to put up one hell of a fight versus the German.
There was Cody Nikola-Latkovsky looking to the high side to try and get the slipstream off of Christian Grotta, who's just come through because he's trying to make his way past Ilya Drovosekov up towards the Le Mans chicane. Wasn't actually hard fought by the Gatachan Ballas Esports driver, allowing Cody Nikola-Latkovsky to make his way through, but a big slide going through the Le Mans chicane, and Latkovsky, well, that was definitely hand over hand going all the way through there. That was terrifying for the Macedonians. Going to receive a little bit of bump drafting from Ilya Drovosekov again. You can actually do it in the banking, as they will push their way round. Ilya Drovosekov will sit in third position, remain in third position, 40 seconds off of the race lead. Zabdir, we're still awaiting the pit stops potentially from Zabdir and Drovosekov, which will see Cody Nikola-Latkovsky head back towards the front. He's been absolutely superb today.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a number of stories up and down the grid, to be honest, of similar stories. I mean, Latkovsky has just been so quick so far. Drovosekov can't really do anything. Don't forget, by the way, these two you would expect to be fighting over the overall race win, to be honest, but Drovosekov with that drive-through penalty a long time ago now in this race during the first pit stop cycle has really eliminated any chance of him winning this race, but you could argue that he wasn't going to get there anyway as this battle for the race lead continues. Final half an hour, this is going to be a very long leading fight if it does continue on like this.
It's going to drag on for Christian Grotta, and it's not going to last long enough for Sven Mackenberg. Whoever's leading the way is going to be tense for this final 26 minutes of the race. Whoever's just tailing in behind, it's like, okay, that's one more lap gone, then there's another lap gone, then each lap is one less opportunity to find a way through, so you really have to get the job done quick. But if it stays as close as it is, I can't see either of these guys pulling away unless something like that happens. Getting caught up behind one of the Porsches is Sven Mackenberg. That's going to cost him maybe just over that's 8 tenths of a second. Still cost him a little bit of time. Not great for the German. He's got to reclose that gap back, get back sort of in strong slipstream range, and to then remount the offensive on the race leader Grotta. Yeah, not ideal. And anything like that can come between them over the course of the next 26 minutes. But if it stays as close as it is, it's going to be a case of you don't actually want to be in the lead. You're going to want to be in second place. We've talked about it a lot. We saw it with the MX-5s. The person that led coming out of the Le Mans chicane wasn't usually the person that was leading the way as soon as they crossed the timing line.
Yeah, it just happened that was the case for the race win in both races. Cool. No, obviously they were under specifically the first race. Obviously massively clear. In the second race, it was just a three-way fight, and then there was a bit of issue, so we won't talk about that too much. He is absolutely right. You don't really want to be leading coming out of the Le Mans chicane. But I think Sven Mackenberg's having these, like maybe it's overheating the tyres, not 100% sure what it is, but it's kind of like closing up, then dropping off, then closing up, then dropping off, then closing up, then dropping off. Maybe one time we'll be close enough to properly go for something, but I can't imagine that's particularly great when it comes down to tyre life within this race. That's maybe because these cars are quite hard to follow nose to tail in. There is Christian Grotta and Sven Mackenberg behind. And of course, the Mackenbergs do want to sweep the race victories in both the prototype category and the GTE. I think one of those is pretty assured in Marvin Mackenberg. And yes, I can say that because I don't believe in the commentator's curse. So, 32 seconds clear, it should be pretty much set and sorted. But for Christian Grotta, I think Ilya Drovosekov, by the way, has just had a potential issue in the final section. Certainly lost a bit of time, might just be a connection problem rather than anything else. There is a yellow flag out in the final section, he has dropped back, and that is why Ilya Drovosekov has disconnected from this race, I do believe.
Yeah, that would explain a lot, and that could well be the end of his day. unfortunately, with just less than 25 minutes to go. So a real shame for the Spa 2.4 hour winner and real main race contender here today. Yeah, he's jumping out all over the place.
I don't think he's fully gone.
No, I agree. I don't think he's fully gone yet either, but he is on his way, unfortunately, if that's the thing. It's not, but you get the idea. He looks, yeah, he's certainly struggling. And it's just a disappointing day overall for him, really. He would have been aiming for a race win, qualified inside the top 3, was up there in the front group for the first part of the race as well, Zach, but things have just not gone his way today, and that's just the nail in the coffin by the looks of it. He has DNF now.
Yeah, that is heartbreaking, really, for Drovosekov. And yeah, he's been so quick in this race, but unfortunately, Lady Luck has not shone his way. I do remember, I think it was the first season of RaceRoom Ranked with Drovosekov in one of the championships that he was robbed quite late on for it. He seemed so dominant, and then unfortunately lost the championship in one of the dying stages of it. I think he won 3 of the 4 races and then lost the championship in the final round at Watkins Glen. So it seems to be a pattern forming for Drovosekov in terms of bad luck, but yeah, hopefully it can pick back up again, because the potential for this race was there. A lot of positives to take, just unfortunately not quite a positive race result for the Swiss driver Lewis. It's, again, we come back to it again and again, just one of those things in racing, sim racing, disconnections, hardware issues. It happens sometimes when you've got, you know, from people from all over the world on one server. It's bound to happen to someone. Unfortunately, it's happened to Drovosekov.
Yeah, that is just the way the cookie crumbles, I'm afraid. And it's a shame for Drovosekov, because he's done a good job to recover. Now, that was a bit scary with Lucas Vullering having a bit of a battle with Mikael Lapanik, almost pulled out in front of these two battling for the race leaders. They battle behind the M6 of Lapanik, trying to get past the Callaway of Vullering. The battle for the race lead is absolutely on now, because Christian Grotte's got Rui Felipe directly ahead of him, and a very tight fight for the race lead overall. 22.5 minutes left to go, only a handful of laps around the Daytona International Speedway to see who's going to come out on top here. Who is it going to be? Is it going to be Grotte? Is it going to be Mackenberg? Or could there be something between the two of them that will bring Killian out into the mix? Not necessarily sure about that one. 22 seconds behind is an awful long way. But right now with these two, they are, I mean, they're the stars of the show right now, Ewan. They're the focus of our attention, and it is just happens that it is for the overall race lead. Just 7 tenths between the two of them. There's not been an opportunity where Sven Mackenberg's been able to properly get a really good attempt.
Yeah, one of the only battles that's below a second right now in the field. Certainly is in the Daytona prototype. There is one further down in GT3 right now, but this is where our attention is, and rightly so as well, because it's for the overall win. Over 20 minutes to go. Sven Mackenberg, the experience of this race, of course, from 1 year ago, looking to get that race win. And the kind of discussions and arguments about where you want to be going on to the final lap may start to fester in the back of these minds a little bit here, Zach, because we saw in the Masters that the first place to be, or being in first place around the bus stop on the final lap was the right place to be in 2 different, very different circumstances. But I'm remembering back to the RaceRoom Ranked Championship and the touring car race that we had just towards that latter end of last year. Obviously very different situation to these prototypes, but being second was the best place to be. So I don't think the answer is quite clear, really. In real life and in other simulators, indeed, it's very obvious that you want to be at least second, maybe further back, but it's not quite so obvious here, and that's going to be the debate for these two.
It is circumstantial. I mean, it sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, sometimes does, sometimes doesn't. It depends. It depends who's leading, who's trailing behind, what happens on that run into the launch game. If you're the man in second, you are just going to be hoping that the slipstream carries you all the way around the banking, and that allows you to pull out at the last moment to be able to get ahead. And for Sven Mackenberg, he's already tried and tested that run to the line. He did it a few laps ago. And as soon as he pulled out to the right-hand side versus Christian Grotte, he wasn't able to actually get the car ahead, not even alongside. So for Sven Mackenberg, after taking that experience, moving forward onto that final lap, he knows that he actually can't get the run to the line from second place. So surely it's got to be a do or die on-track move, Lewis.
Surely it has to be. Like I say, he's just not been really close enough on board with our race leader now, Christian Grotte. he ticks off yet another lap, the 72nd one around the Daytona International Speedway. As Zabdir comes into the pit lane for the GT3 race lead. Of course, there are a few that are still yet to stop within various categories, Zabdir being one of them, to relinquish the race lead back over to Cody Nikola-Latkovsky. That one is expected and on our books, means he's done an hour-long stint, about an hour-long stint. Of course, the race being 2 hours 24 minutes into the final 20 minutes of it. The expectation is that there's probably a few more that are required to come to the pit lane, although none of them now in the lead of GTE or the Daytona prototype category. It's more just once Cody Nikola-Latkovsky comes into the race lead of the GT3, then all of our leaders in each of the categories will have made their final pit stops and are looking decent for it, but it's more our focus of attention on Grutter versus Maggenberg. There's Latkovsky taking over the race lead. And there is the race lead overall. It is the tightest battle on circuit. There's a couple of close ones coming in. Of course, Vullering and Lapinick, who we saw coming through when these two lapped them. That one was pretty tight. And Rokas de B and Florian Wittrich did switch around not too long ago. Wittrich took over third position in class. Rokas de B continuing to struggle. Rokas de B has made his... Yeah, he did make his pit stop, of course he did. His final one just made it a lot earlier on. Ewan, when do you think the opportunity really is for Sven Maggenberg? We've seen him time and time again get close to this point, but then a dirty air just seems to be enough, and the drive off, I mean, you see that the drive off from Christian Grutter, courtesy of clean air, was far superior to Sven Maggenberg. So is there a dive coming in here somewhere? I mean, these two seem to be pretty evenly matched.
It might have to be if it gets too much later on in the race. I don't think it's going to be here because of the slipstream that Grutter is going to be able to get from the GTE Porsche. It's just going to give him the legs to hold on in towards turn number one. But I just don't think Sven Maggenberg has quite got the straight line speed to really be that close to Grutter. And so he's going to have to take, whenever that opportunity comes, he's going to have to take it when it comes. He can't wait around and sort of, maybe that was an obvious thing to say. He can't wait around and stay behind and wait for later on in the race. In my opinion, he's got to go for it as soon as the opportunity arises. But in the time we've been watching it, I haven't seen an obvious opportunity for Maggenberg to go through.
No, he's not quite been close enough. I mean, he's been there, in Grotter's mirrors and, poking his nose in and looking feisty, but no realistic avenue through at the moment for Sven Maggenberg. But I think you're completely right in saying that he needs to find a way through now to try and bridge an advantage if he can. I think of the two, Maggenberg's probably got the pace advantage just if he hooks the lap up. But let's not forget he's used up a lot of his tyres getting to this point, and easier said than done to pull out a gap for a Daytona. Grutter is not going to allow him to bridge a gap away from himself. So, yeah, Maggenberg, the pressure is on him to... I think it all starts here at the Le Mans chicane. Maggenberg needs to get a good run in. You can see way too deep on the brakes. That's really going to tarnish his momentum out, slowing down, not getting the exit that he would have wanted. And yeah, that is exactly what Maggenberg is doing wrong. I think flow in fast out for Le Mans chicane, get that run maybe into turn one or the international horseshoe, but he needs to tidy it up a little bit. I think he's overdriving the car a little bit too, Lewis. Braking a little bit too late. That's costing him on the exit.
Yeah, that was not a great run through the Le Mans chicane. Certainly not the best we've seen all day from Sven Maggenberg. Now trying to take every little thousandth of a second possible by even brushing the apron coming round on the start-finish straight. And like I say, just losing out there. It wasn't great. I mean, Christian Grutter just missed the apex in the first corner, but of course Sven Maggenberg was too far behind to take any real advantage from it. But yeah, crazy stuff. Whilst this is going on, I did say, by the way, about Lapinick and Vullering. They are very, very close. I think they might be bump drafting. I think Lapinick might have been bump drafting. You can see Lapinick on the inside. That is absolutely not the case, as Lapinick gets down the inside of Vullering, switches back the inside way goes of Vullering. I mean, okay, this is a battle that's definitely going to go on, but it's not for any major position. The final spot inside the top 8. That's really, I think, you care about so much. It's just, it's a wheel-to-wheel battle. That's what they care about, regardless of position. That's the focus right now. I am going toe-to-toe with someone. I have to beat them. That's the racing mentality.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter what position it's for, to be honest. It just matters that you are battling for a position. Oh dear me, is that Hout or Parvin? It's Hout's there in the third place. We could well have a battle for the final spot on the podium here, Zach, very soon, because that was a big mistake. It looked like the Dutchman just went off on his own there. Through the kick, got maybe onto the grass on the outside line, certainly spun to the inside. There looks to be a bit of damage on the front of that car as well, and 15 minutes is a long way to defend from Daniel Parvin. We may well see that fight for third soon.
Yeah, that front left wheel arch does not look in the best of conditions, let's put it that way. The gap is about 2.5 seconds. He's going to have to hope it's only sort of cosmetic damage to that wheel arch and not, you know, affecting the steering geometry or anything like that, the cast of the toe, the camber of his car, and it's just a bit of a dent, so he can carry on still with good pace, and particularly not going to be affecting his straight line speed, but Parvan closing by another 0.4 of a second. So yeah, the battle is on, and Parvan surely would have seen that mistake and said, right, it's game on. He's made that mistake, he's going to be shaken up a little bit. Now's my opportunity to start, you know, put it in the car into an extra gear, Fast and Furious style. Just find that, you know, 7th, 8th gear, whatever it is that they sometimes find on those films, and kick it up a notch, close the gap, and still that is coming down very, very quickly. It's going to be tough for Hout to defend for the final 13 minutes of the race, because Parvan closing that gap is inevitable at this rate.
So you can tell Zach Sweeney's been watching the Fast and Furious films.
I have.
He was almost saying as if, like, you know, whatever they use in those films, as if like he hasn't been watching them. That was a good play, but we do know the truth. Definitely a massive Fast and Furious.
Good films.
Well, good is a term. They're entertaining. Let's go with that.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
They've got cool, fast-looking cars, all right. Leave me and my childness alone, all right.
Oh,
just because you're boring, Lewis.
Your childhood, mate. The first one came out in 2001.
Exactly.
That's before even Ewan was born.
I was -5, mate. That's my premature childhood.
This is terrible. Well, as both me and broadcast director Chris feel old, we'll focus on the race and not talk about Fast and Furious too much before get angry with that lot. Race lead in each category, obviously being separated ever so slightly over the last couple of laps. Christian Greta pulling out 1.5 seconds over Sven Mackenberg, and Killian Hout is dropping back into the pathway of Parvin. The podium in the GTE category being Marvin Mackenberg leading by a whopping 37 seconds over the Finn of Villa Cravey. Florian Vitrick, who moved up into the podium positions, getting past Rokas to be in the recent past up into third, round out the podium in that category, with Cody Nikola Latkowski dominant as form in the GT3 category, 15 seconds clear of Zabdir and Enzo Guibert, 15 seconds apart apiece. Close battles, not at the front of any of the categories with the exception of the Daytona prototypes, but there is a close battle again between Vullering, Lapanik and potentially D'Amico as well, who might be joining that fight. Could well see one there. DeMonte versus Tamino, also pretty close for 8th position.
Yeah, that's in GTE. You can see the two Porsches making their way to the International Horseshoe now, and DeMonte to the outside line. I think the Frenchman might have just had a slightly longer stop recently because of the damage maybe that he got after a bit of contact earlier on in towards the latter portion of the second stint. That's contact though, and that's Tamino around, and well, nearly is. DeMonte certainly is around. And a big dive from one of the BMW GT3s. I think that was Lapanik as well. He was, and well, it's all kicked off a little bit in GTE. Zach, bit of clumsy contact really from DeMonte, who was in control of that situation, but seemed to go straight into the back of the Spaniard.
Well, yeah. Silly is the only word really to describe that one, and both of these guys really haven't had a smooth race. You know, Demont with that spin at turn 1, Tamino I think having that drive through as well, and just general misfortune for both of them. Yeah, they're 8th and 9th at the moment in their class, and I don't want to be too harsh, but I mean, no surprise with how they've been, you know, driving over the last sort of half an hour or so. And yeah, Lapanik was that BMW, as you said, but now closing the gap to Vollering for P8 and continuing that fight. I mean, it's not the lead of the race, but it's position nonetheless. It's inside the top 10, and I guess, you know, P8 it's better than P9 in some cases. You know, it's not quite a milestone like a top 5 or a podium, but it's an extra position, so I'm sure Lapanik is gonna want to try and gun for it and get himself up in 8th.
Well, I say, honestly, at this point, regardless of position, it could be 11th and 12th, it could be 1st and 2nd. When you've been racing for 2 hours and 15 minutes at this point, and you've got 10 minutes left to go in the race, you've got a car ahead of you. That car is getting behind you, right? That's the main focus right now. D'Amico as well is also closing in, so there could well be a 3-way fight here for 8th. Giving us at least some much needed action up towards the checkered flag, and hey, maybe we will see another one of our three-way fights, a little drag race up towards the line. We saw him, of course, in the MX-5 races, in both of the MX-5 races, as you would expect around here. Suspicions would be we might well see something for the 8th place in the GT3 category. A lot of retirements in this race. Hopefully none more to add to it in the next 9.5 minutes. Not long left to go. I think, Ewan, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but it does look as though Christian Grotte does seem to have the measure of Sven Mackenberg. With the lap times that have been put in, I did say before about the 40.5 that Sven Mackenberg had set. They have dropped off of the pace a little bit recently, but Christian Grotte did also set a 40.5 not too long ago, so does have the pace to match the German behind.
Yeah, and I do wonder whether Sven Mackenberg has just taken a little bit too much out of his tyres here in this stint now, and whether he is just feeling the effects of that. The Porsche being in the way here through the kink and into the West Horseshoe as well is not ideal, and he's going to lose further time as a result of this. He's going to grow out to nearly 2 seconds. It's Rokas De B who's just up in front, trying to chase down Florian Vutrovic himself. But not good news for Sven Mackenberg. Although, Zach, you do see although Mackenberg did lose a little bit of time, the GTEs really aren't that slow through the infield section compared to the Daytona prototypes. The gap's still only a second and a half.
Yeah, I mean, we were saying that the prototypes really, their main strong suit is straight line speed. The GTs have got similar downforce levels, and of course their assists with ABS allow them to brake a bit deeper, and when you've got the twisty and turny bits, then it really does help. This is the fight actually following burst is Lapnik in towards the International Horseshoe. They're fighting and door banging, and round goes the BMW. That's Lapnik looping himself around, going to lose the place to D'Amico. Down now to P10. Clumsy bit of contact that they really didn't have to initiate in, and unfortunately for Lapnik, that has seen him on the worst end of it. Vollering still able to carry on. However, the Ferrari of D'Amico were back into the fight, and well, Vollering has got rid of the Russian, but he's now got the Italian hot on his heels.
Well, there is a fight here for the podium in the Daytona prototype category, because Kilian Hout, with all that damage, we saw him having an issue earlier on. He is about to lose out as Parvin makes his way through, sends it in into the Le Mans chicane, sends it in a little bit too hard into the Le Mans chicane though. The Romanian might lose out here as Kilian Hout might come back through, but at the moment it does seem to have worked out for Daniel Parvin. Up into 3rd position in the prototype category, heading into the final few laps. Could it be Kilian Hout coming back through? That's the important thing. Out into the start-finish straight up towards the tri-oval. Oh my goodness. Kilian Hout almost making contact with Parvin. There certainly was contact between the two of them as they were brushing wheels just ever so slightly on the race down towards the start-finish line. Parvin, though, the Romanian's going to hang on to 3rd, and you would suspect Ewan is about to pull out an almighty gap to the Flying Dutchman behind, who might well struggle with the damage in his car.
Yeah, Parvin's hurting, Hoots is hurting there with the damage, and you can see he's able to keep up with Parvin in the slipstream, but once he pulls out, there's no speed in that damaged Daytona prototype, and so not able to get through down there into turn number 1. I think the Romanian is going to recover to 3rd place, which is not a bad drive considering all that's happened so far today. I think he was one of those who got a drive-through penalty earlier on in this race during the first round of pit stops, and so to recover like that is not bad at all, Zach, although that is weird. He just slows down and lets the Dutchman back through again, and now he's on the inside line out of turn 6 and looking to overtake once again, so that was exceptionally weird.
Either his potential slowdown from the Le Mans chicane, the Le Mans chicane when he cut it though,
It would
surely.
have been such a long time ago, that's the thing.
Would he have not got another penalty subsequent from that? Unless he's just playing around with Hout and having a bit of banter on track. I don't know. That's the only other thing I can imagine other than that slowdown from the Le Mans chicane. How long I think it's around a minute they get side by side through the Le Mans chicane. Of course, Hout has got no hope of hanging on, but that's a long time. Nearly a lap of carrying that slowdown. Surely, I don't know. It's a weird one. He must just be messing around with Hout on track.
I did think that he would have got a slowdown penalty for it. I just would have thought he would have served it on the run down towards turn 1. But alas, did not. Parvin, though, will hang on to 3rd position because Hout is behind. But the Gatchain Ballas Esports driver is sat behind, potentially going to go for a move down to the first corner, though I'd suspect might stay in 4th as Parvin will this time stay in 3rd position and potentially will actually hold it for a lap as we'll see the Romanian pulling away now. And again, you can see the damage on the front end of that car. You can see the way it's reacting going round the circuit. It is not quite the same as the car ahead. Speaking of podium battles, by the way, gotta say, I think Vutric and DeB closing back in is Rokas DeB. Gap came down on the last lap by nearly 2 seconds. It was a 144.8 for Rokas DeB and a 146.6 for Brian Vutric. That is quite a substantial gap.
Yeah, it is, and I'm not sure whether there was traffic involved in that gap closing, but it certainly did on that lap. And let's not forget that Rokas DeB will have fairly fresher tyres as also compared to Florian Vutric, I would imagine anyway, because Vutric went for the strategy of changing tyres at the first pit stop and then taking a shorter splash towards the end. Rokas DeB doing the opposite, which means he put his newest tyres on after Vutric did, if that makes any sense to anybody. So the gap now is second. That disadvantage or advantage between the two of them, I guess, diminished at this stage with less than 4 minutes to go, Zach. It's very much a battle, driver versus driver at this stage, but DeB has got to be careful of running out of time here. There can't be long to go.
Time is definitely not on his side, but I mean, he's just got to dig deep and keep driving. He's been given this opportunity. He's been able to close that gap, and once he gets under a second, he's going to close it, exponentially, get in the slipstream, and really be able to mount an offensive maneuver and maybe get himself onto the podium. I mean, Vutric is definitely not going to give it up that fight, so maybe it could be one to watch in the dying moments of this race. Also, Pavan and Hout not actually separated by too much, despite Hout's damage. Pavan really hasn't actually been able to get away. Talking of fights, though, one man that hasn't really experienced much of it since he cleared the train very early on this race is Cody Nikola Latovsky. He's just been in a world of his own in that leading Porsche, and well, with only 3 minutes left to go, it seems that nothing can stop him other than himself. Yeah, the Macedonian's been in control of the GT3 category, not quite as long as Mackenberg has been in control of the GTE category, Marvin Mackenberg that is, looking absolutely sensational. Did just hear a crash, that would be Tamino. I think Tamino's had an issue further back within the GTE category. That would be a bit of a shame for Alejandro, being, I don't know if it was sent around, but he was quite close to Monty, and I think even ahead of Monty at that point, and clearly, as they go around to complete another lap, Tamino's having a few more problems, as we've only got a couple more laps left to go for a lot of these drivers. The opportunities have gone by. Hout's still close to Parvin. This battle's still going on between D'Amico and Vullering. Lapinick also involved. A three-way fight for 8th spot as we were expecting. Ferrari versus Callaway versus BMW M6, which I would say Ewan O'Leary will be happy about, but he prefers a Z4, so
Oh yeah, big time.
It's just not a fan,
The
isn't it?
Z4?
He loves the Z4. Do you not know this?
Big.
What?
As much as I can say, Zach Sweeney doesn't know race circuits, and that's hilarious. Ewan O'Leary liking the BMW Z4 is somehow more funny.
I don't know why it's funny. It's the best car ever
It's a
made.
horrible car.
It's not. It's fantastic.
It's disgusting.
But you two are both wrong. I hope people agree with me. But they won't, probably. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. I know my opinion's right, so...
Well, you've turned to me, I've taught you so well.
No, anyway. We'll move on from it because we've got only just over a minute to go here. This battle for 8th place now no longer has D'Amico involved. We'll see what happens between Vullering and Lapinick down towards turn number 1. BMW on the inside. That was late on the brakes. Maybe a bit too late, Zach, because the Corvette can come back.
Trying to unmute myself on VMix because that is just completely a thing, and is something that I haven't actually gotten to do so far in this race, but that is on that occasion one that I did do. But yeah, this fight is continuing on between Vullering and Lapinick. While not to the race win or anything, not quite the wooden spoon, but P8, as we said, it's a position. Their competitive nature is digging deep, and they're really going to want to have that position, because a race is a race. It doesn't matter what it's for. If you can race someone, you're going to go for it, and that's what Lapinick's going to do. And of course, they've already come to blows a little bit earlier on between himself and Vullering. He's gotten back past the Ferrari with D'Amico and is going to want to gun for another fight with the dying stages. I think this is going to be the final lap. It's not timer +1, it's timer and then that lap, is it not? So this could be Sven Mackenberg. It's not looking good for the German, and it's looking even better for Grot.
Yep, for the Norwegian of Christian Grøtta. He's in the position at the moment. Obviously, lap traffic could play its part. The Le Mans chicane could play its part. That's where the big drama could unfold. But right now, you can see the 1.4 second gap in all its clarity back down towards Sven Mackenberg. These two have not been separated by much when you consider all the laps completed. The 84 times have been around the Daytona International Circuit. The battles they've had over the last 2 hours and 24 minutes, it potentially came down to one mistake for Sven Mackenberg. That spin at the first corner that cost him 5 or more seconds as Christian Grøtta was able to come through at that point. He was able to take the race lead and has not looked back since. The Daytona 2.4H here on RaceRoom goes to Christian Grøtta. Sven Mackenberg will come across the line in second. A tight battle between the two, but tyres were not there for Mackenberg. The German had to settle for second. Meanwhile, Daniel Parvin, the Romanian, will come across the line in third. We have to look down the order for our other race leaders in their respective categories. They'll be having plenty of time to enjoy their final victory lap, plenty clear of the rest of the contingent behind, but Marvin Mackenberg will be the one to take a very dominant victory in the GTE category, Ewan.
Absolutely, it was a very dominant victory in the GT3 category this time last year, but he's moved up to the GTEs and he's conquered them as well. More than 3/4 of a minute between himself and Villecravey, who's going to take home a nice second place. Florian Butteridge should get on the podium as well after surviving a late charge from Rokas to P, but nobody touched Marvin Mackenberg today, Lewis.
Yeah, a super effort from Marvin Mackenberg across the line ahead of Villecravey and Florian Butteridge. A brilliant drive from him, and like you say, unbelievably dominant. 44 seconds clear. I think it's 46 across the line. Absolutely sensational, as we'll see Cody Nikola Latkovsky navigating some of the back markers. Of course, that battle ahead is that one between Vullering and Lapinick, which if he doesn't get through, Zach, we might get for another lap, which I wouldn't be too opposed to. Of course, they're not going to let Cody Nikola Latkovsky go here, as he's going to come round the final corner.
What a race it's been. It's only singing praises for the Macedonian. As soon as he got into the lead, he never looked back once. Porsche might get the BMW on the run to the line, which we'll see him finish the race here. But for Cody Nikola Latkovsky, it's been a phenomenal Daytona 2.4 hours. He crosses the line first, victorious in such dominant fashion. 40 seconds clear of the rest. What a race it was for Nikola Latkovsky. Only good things to say about that. Flawless in the sense that we hardly saw him, and in some cases that's exactly what you want as a race winner. What a race that was, full of everything. I think we had everything to talk about. Not really a boring portion of that race. 3 very deserving winners, but 2 very dominated classes.
Yeah, indeed. Absolutely fantastic. Saw the confirmation of the results there. Christian Grøtta, Sven Mackenberg, Daniel Parvin, and Killian Houghton top 4 within the Daytona prototype category. Race winners in the GTEs going the way of Marvin Mackenberg, Villecravey and Florian Butteridge. Before we can see the results, Cody Nikola Latkovsky, Zabdir finishing in second position with Enzo Guibert behind in third. Absolutely super stuff there, Ewan. A great race to end with. We were missed that final fight that we were expecting for race victory in the prototype category, but still, I think we had our fair share of action.
We certainly did. It was not a bad race at all from a spectator's point of view. Hopefully people enjoyed it at home as well. Yeah, it's been a good one, but unfortunately more heartbreak for Sven Mackenberg. Fastest lap of the race today, second place for the second year in a row. A real disappointment for him once again, and hopefully he'll be back next year to try and finally win this race. Not quite been able to do that. And Marvin Mackenberg, his brother, has been having a much better time of things, winning 2 categories in the last 2 years. He's been absolutely fantastic at this event, Zach. We were here last year. It was very entertaining back then. This one, another very entertaining race as well. Thoroughly enjoyable.
Yeah, as I say, no boring point. It's just amazing that year in, year out we've had such great results and such great racing throughout the entirety of the event. And between the support for the MX-5 and the main event for the Daytona 2.4 hours, just only good things to say. And action up and down, drama, chaos, disconnects, crashes, pit strategies, on-track action. This race really had it all.
Certainly had, and I mean that's exactly what we expect from these kind of races in the RaceRoom ranks. stuff and we go and do the Daytona 2.4 hour. Of course, throughout the year we'll have the Nürburgring, I would hope anyway, I don't want to speak on behalf of Chris, he's a very busy man behind the scenes. Nürburgring 2.4, of course we have them at Spa, got races at Bathurst as well, and these are always fantastic events to be a part of from a competitive perspective, but also from a driver's perspective. They're so open for everyone to come along and take part.
They certainly are. Anybody can qualify. Obviously, you can't just waltz into the top split, of course, on the broadcasted split. That does take a lot of talent, unfortunately, for me and all of us, I guess. But anyone can compete, and that's the great thing about it. And yeah, they're just great events, great multi-class event indeed. So yeah, it's been thoroughly enjoyable again, Zach. RaceRoom once again delivering, and yeah, hopefully we'll be back for more a little later.
Absolutely, I really cannot wait, and yeah, honestly, more events, more big events. These guys, familiar faces, it's always a pleasure, and well, I cannot wait for the future.
Well, that is us done here for the Daytona 2.4 hour. Of course, you can catch up with everything on RaceRoom by following us on all forms of social media, as well as subscribing here on YouTube, where you can watch this and all the upcoming ranked events that we have, where you can also watch the WTCR Esports Championship, which did start on Wednesday. We do have another round coming up in a couple of weeks' time as we go racing at Spa. But from us in the commentary booth, for myself, Lewis McGlade, from Ewan O'Leary and Zach Sweeney, and also Captain Coffee, of course, Chris Doe, behind the scenes. Thank you so much for joining us. Go get yourselves racing on RaceRoom, and until next time, have a very warm goodbye.